Chapter 310. Go to watch net. Li Yundong's words made Zi Yuan a little absent-minded for a moment. Ever since she had seen the shadow of her master in this boy, she had been subconsciously chasing after the shadow of her master in this boy. But now it seemed that he and her master were really two different kinds of people. Go to watch net. 7K. Oath M. 1 3 Xue. 4 net. Her master was modest, gentle and tolerant, while the boy in front of her was jumping up and down, hating evil as his enemy. For a moment, Zi Yuan's eyes were a little confused. Seeing her like this, Li Yundong thought that Zi Yuan didn't want to participate in the competition, so he said, Zi Yuan, I know you have difficulties. If you don't want to participate in the competition, I won't force you. Hearing this, Zi Yuan suddenly woke up as if she had just woken up from a dream. She smiled and said, Who said I don't want to? Li Yundong was stunned for a moment, then overjoyed. He laughed and said, Are you willing? Zi Yuan smiled slightly and said, Tea art is not like other things. It can't be learned in a few days. Moreover, it will be very embarrassing for a man like you to go up and perform tea art. Li Yundong laughed and said, If you are willing to participate, there is no need for me to go up and embarrass myself. Although Su Chan and Ruan Hongling didn't get along with each other, at this time, the two of them could be said to have a common enemy. Seeing that Zi Yuan had agreed to participate in the competition, they were both overjoyed. Even Xueqi, who had always been cold, couldn't help but smile. A few days later, the first China Tea Culture Challenge tournament began in the square of the Workers' Cultural Palace in Dongwu City. When Li Yundong and the others arrived in groups, they saw lanterns and streamers everywhere, and the crowd was surging. There were reporters holding cameras and cameras everywhere, snapping away at the sexy waitresses and elegant tea attendants. Many Furlan were murdered in an instant. Li Yundong was a little surprised. There are so many people? Su Chan was a crazy person. She was excited when she saw the lively scene. She cheered and clapped her hands. It's so lively. Yundong, when will we go up? Li Yundong looked around and saw that there were many manufacturers participating in the competition on the side. There were beautiful etiquette girls holding up all kinds of tea and manufacturers' signs. People like them, who had participated in the competition in private capacities, were like scorpions defecating. Li Yundong smiled and said, I don't know. There should be a draw later, right? Xueqi looked around and said in a deep voice, A lot of famous teas have arrived. Look over there, there's the West Lake Longjing, which is known as one of the top 10 teas in China. There's also the Dongting Biluakun, which is known as the frightening fragrance. Next to it is the Junshan Silver Needle, which is known as the golden inlaid jade. Next to the silver needle is the Yunnan Pu'er tea, which is known as the edible antique tea. Xueqi looked at them one by one. Suddenly, her expression changed and she said in a low voice, Li Yundong, look. Li Yundong looked in the direction of her finger and saw that Qing'er, the arrogant disciple of Zhong Qingsong, was also participating in the competition. However, although they were cultivators from the Pine Valley Cottage in Mount Huangshan, they didn't choose the tea leaves of Mount Huangshan. Instead, they chose Wui de Hong Pao. Li Yundong knew little about tea, so he asked in confusion, What's wrong with this? Su Chan explained to him with a smile, This is the best tea. It's even more expensive than Huangshan Maofeng. I heard from my master that 20 grams of such top-grade de Hong Pao tea leaves can be sold for more than 100,000. Li Yundong couldn't help but be shocked. What? Doesn't that mean that a sip of tea costs more than 100,000? Zi Yuan smiled slightly and said, Tea culture has a long history. There are high-end tea leaves and low-end tea leaves. Anyone can afford to drink low-end tea leaves, but high-end tea leaves are the exclusive favorites of the rich. Go to the internet. 7K. Oath M. Now, there are only 4 de Hong Pao tea trees left on the steep precipice of the Nine Dragons' Nest. With such a small output of tea, it's naturally extraordinarily expensive. Li Yundong couldn't help sighing. F*CK, I'm a dignified cultivator, and I can't even support my own disciples. These B***stards can actually drink more than 100,000 in a sip of tea. What kind of world is this? Su Chan pulled Li Yundong's hand and said with a smile, I believe that you will make a lot of money in the future. I want to follow you and eat well. Li Yundong laughed and patted the girl's forehead. Well, I'll take your auspicious words. But you have to eat less. With your appetite, even a mountain of gold will make you poor. Xueqi immediately pouted and looked resentful. You haven't even made money yet, and you're already talking about me. You're so annoying. I clearly eat very little. Her innocent appearance made Ziyuan and Zhou Qin smile. Li Yundong even laughed and rubbed her cheek. The group consisted of 1 man and 4 women. The man was handsome, and the women were beautiful. Each of them had a different temperament, and they immediately attracted the attention of many people. Many reporters and tourists took out their phones and cameras to take pictures of the group. Go to the internet. 7K. Oath M. Kai 9811 Xue 0 Net 6 Li Yundong and the others were talking and laughing when they suddenly heard a surprised voice coming from the side. Beauty, I found you again. Li Yundong and the others turned their heads and saw a young and handsome boy shouting at Xueqi with a face full of ecstasy. Li Yundong looked and thought, hey, isn't this the rich second generation who chased after Xueqi in Shantang 7 Li? Why is this guy here? Wait, there's a girl standing next to him. She seems very familiar. Xueqi frowned and tugged at Li Yundong's sleeve. I see this guy again. He's so annoying. Why is he haunting me? Li Yundong only glanced at Shen Yu, and then his eyes quickly fell on a girl next to him. The girl had her back to Li Yundong and was curiously taking photos with the SLR camera in her hand. When she turned her face, Li Yundong was shocked. Isn't this Shen Hui with a child's face and big breasts? Shen Hui turned around and saw Li Yundong at a glance. She was also shocked. Why are you here? Shen Yu glanced at Shen Hui, approached her, and asked curiously, Sister, do you know this guy? Shen Hui snorted. When she saw Shen Yu coming over, she glanced at him with disgust and quietly moved away from him. She sneered and said, Of course I know him. We're old acquaintances. As she said this, she cast a malicious look at Li Yundong and smiled insincerely. Shen Hui looked at the beauties beside Li Yundong and sneered. By the way, why are you here instead of staying in Tianan City? Don't tell me you're also here to participate in the competition? Li Yundong thought of what had happened last time and felt a little embarrassed. He coughed dryly and said, What, you don't allow it? Shen Hui smiled and said, How could I dare not allow it? However, if you are really here to participate in the competition, then I will give you a chance. In front of so many people here, if you can clean my shoes, then I promise you that you will win first place. If you don't want to, I promise you that you will lose the competition. Li Yundong was proud and arrogant. How could he stand such a girl with such a temper? He immediately pulled a long face and said with a chuckle, Why don't you kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times in front of so many people here? I will accept you as my disciple and not spank you. Otherwise, I will strip you naked and spank you. What do you think? Shen Hui's face immediately turned pale and she was so angry that her whole body was trembling. Li Yundong, don't be arrogant. Li Yundong sneered and said, It seems that I'm not the arrogant one. Shen Yu rolled his eyes and asked Shen Hui in a low voice, Sister, has this guy offended you? Shen Hui glared at him and said, It's none of your business. Shen Yu didn't care. For him, making trouble for Li Yundong was the thing he was most happy to do. It would be best to make this guy's face dirty, so that it would be more convenient for him to snatch his love away. Shen Yu smiled and looked like a playboy. He raised his chin and said to Li Yundong, Hey, I advise you to go back quickly. Don't participate in this competition. Ruan Hongling, who had been pressed down by Ziyuan, finally couldn't stand it anymore. She jumped up and shouted, You 2 shameless things, what are you showing off here? Isn't it just that you have a great father? Get out of here, get out of here. Without your father, what are you? Xueqi surprisingly agreed. She nodded hard and made a face at Shen Yu. Shen Yu was shocked, but when he saw Ruan Hongling's angry look, he felt that when this girl was angry, there was also a special flavor, especially when Xueqi made a face. Her charming and cute appearance made his heart itch. In front of the beauty, Shen Yu was dazzled for a moment. He couldn't even walk and became a love-struck fool. Shan Hui felt disgusted watching from the side. She glared at Li Yundong fiercely and was about to leave when she saw a familiar figure coming over. She was immediately overjoyed and went over to greet him. Dad! Well, speak of the devil. Li Yundong and the others all looked over and saw Shen Hui throwing herself into the arms of an old man in his 60s. The old man was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. He was slightly fat, but his eyes were sharp and bright. Xueqi frowned and whispered in Li Yundong's ear, "This is Shen Wankai, the boss of the Wankai group in Tiannan City. He is a big shot in Tiannan City. I don't know why he came to Donggu City. Maybe he is doing business?" While they were guessing, they saw Shen Yu, Shen Hui, and a few bodyguards next to him surround Shen Wankai and walk to the arena. Shen Wankai exchanged pleasantries with the host, Zhang Yuming, and the others on the arena, and then sat straight in the middle of the referee's seat. When Li Yundong saw this, he immediately took a deep breath. "No way? He is the referee?" Xueqi frowned. No wonder Shen Hui was so arrogant. It turns out that she knows that Shen Wankai is the referee. Well, with Shen Wansai's influence, his score will directly affect the scores of the other referees. No one else would dare to offend him. Suchan looked worried. Then aren't we going to be in trouble? Ruan Hongling was so angry that her face turned pale. What kind of world is this? A group of well-dressed guys look bright on the surface, but in fact, they are all dirty and dirty. Bah! I'm going to tell everyone. Zi Yuan hurriedly grabbed her and shouted, "Nonsense! Do you have any evidence? You're making trouble before the competition even starts." Xueqi also said in a low voice, "What should we do now? Should we advance or retreat? Hurry up and make a decision." For a moment, Li Yundong couldn't help but hesitate. He had never expected that he would encounter so many obstacles when he came to participate in a tea art competition. Before the competition even started, he had already encountered double unspoken rules, and at the same time, he was facing the double threat of the organizer and the referee. No matter how firm Li Yundong's will was, he couldn't help but feel nervous at this time. He frowned inwardly, but just as he was hesitating, he glanced at the arena and saw that Shan Hui was looking at him with a provocative look, as if to say, "Get out of here, lest you make a fool of yourself." Beside her, Shen Yu couldn't help but glance back and forth at Su Chan with a pair of lustful eyes. This time, Li Yundong was infuriated. His face was as dark as water, and he said flatly, "I once said that we cultivators should have the spirit of knowing that there are tigers in the mountain. If you retreat from such a small worldly matter, then what's the point of cultivating? Go home and do nothing." Everyone. Everyone, please take your places. I'm going to accompany my teacher to have a meal. I'm sorry for the late update. Let's bow. // 785462789541. Chapter 3:11. Go to watch net. Li Yundong's resolute words made the people around him suddenly feel refreshed. Zi Yuan also nodded. Yes, we cultivators should indeed have the spirit of not fearing hardships and dangers. As the saying goes, man proposes, God disposes. Since we have already participated in the competition, we should have a clear conscience. Go to watch net. Xueqi was calm and shrewd by nature. It was hard to tell whether she was happy or angry at the moment. She just pondered for a while and said, "Since we are going to participate in the competition, we should pay special attention to the opponents of Westlake Longjing, Taiping Hokue, and Wui Dahong Pao. These competitors are extremely difficult to deal with." Ruan Hongling had blind confidence in Zi Yuan. She said, "This is a competition of tea skills, not a competition of tea leaves. If whoever has the best tea leaves wins, then what's the point of holding such a challenge? Isn't it better to just hold an auction?" "Right, Sister Zi Yuan?" Zi Yuan smiled slightly and didn't comment. Su Chan, the little girl, didn't know what to say. She just looked at this and that, feeling a little unhappy that she couldn't help. Li Yundong didn't pay attention to the little girl's abnormality. He said to Zi Yuan, "When you go on stage later, pay special attention to your surroundings. As the saying goes, you can't have the intention to harm others, but you can't have the heart to guard against others. You have to be wary of these guys playing tricks on some equipment." Zi Yuan smiled confidently. "Don't worry." They talked in private for a while. Not long after, the host of the tea culture and art competition gracefully went on the stage. At this time, the square of the Palace of Culture was surging with people. Not only were there a large number of media reporters, But there were also many businessmen who had heard the news and came to see the beautiful women. After the host made a brief opening speech on the stage, he invited the organizer, Zhang Yuming, to come on stage to give a speech. Zhang Yuming still inherited his authentic and mellow temperament of a nouveau riche. As soon as he got on the stage, his glittering gold necklace, gold bracelets, and gold rings attracted a burst of admiration from the audience. After Zhang Yuming read the opening remarks according to the script, he introduced the referees of the Tea Culture and Art Challenge on the stage one by one. Li Yundong saw that among the referees who were sitting upright, there were scholars who wrote books, well-known media hosts, business tycoons, and even fashion models. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He whispered, "What kind of referees are they? Why are there all kinds of people? Do they know how to make tea?" Zhou Qin said, "I don't know about others, but Chen Wankai knows. As far as I know, he often attends all kinds of rare tea auctions." A while ago, Taiping Monkey King was sold at a high price, and he bought it. Li Yundong laughed. "That's good. The only one who understands tea is my enemy." "Very good, very good." Li Yundong laughed at himself. He saw that the representatives on the stage had already begun to draw numbers. When it was Zi Yuan's turn, she gracefully stepped onto the stage. Her otherworldly temperament caused an uproar under the stage. Watch net. 7K. Oath M. The other manufacturers and the tea lady looked at Zi Yuan as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Ruan Hongling, who was under the stage, smiled proudly and said, "The eyes of the masses are clear." Li Yundong chuckled. After Zi Yuan stepped down from the stage, he looked at the ranking on the stage and suddenly asked in confusion, "Hey, Zi Yuan is the last one? She's the finale." Zhou Qin suddenly sneered and said, "This is the worst position. Tasting tea is like tasting fresh food. Naturally, it is the most advantageous at the beginning. Because at that time, the referees who taste tea will have a refreshing mouth. They will naturally be able to taste the fragrance of the tea more, so they will give a higher score. But if they wait until the end, their taste buds will be a little tired, so the score will naturally be lower." Hearing this, Ruan Hongling said angrily, "Shameless. This must be a black box operation." Li Yundong frowned, but when he looked at the ranking above, he found that Qing'er, who had participated in the competition with Wui Dahong Pao, was ranked second to last in front of Zi Yuan. He said, "Look, Qing'er from the Pine Valley Cottage is ranked in front of Zi Yuan. Isn't she afraid that the judges will not give a high score because of the fatigue of the taste buds?" Zhou Qin shook her head and said, "Wui Dahong Pao is the champion of tea. Its taste is strong and mellow, which can't be replaced by other teas. Maybe this is their idea. They want to use the extremely fragrant tea fragrance of Wui Dahong Pao to make the judges' taste buds tired. Zhenren Zi Yuan's Huangshan Maofeng has a light fragrance, so naturally, she will suffer a great loss." Hearing this, Li Yundong, Su Chan, and Ruan Hongling all cursed the organizers in unison. However, Zi Yuan, who was under the stage, was open-minded. She smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. The real tea art can't be framed by such a sneaky trick." When Li Yundong and the others saw that Zi Yuan was full of confidence, they also felt relieved and focused on watching the tea art competition that had already begun on the stage. They saw a young and beautiful tea lady on the stage. She was dressed in the Gusu style of the Ming dynasty, with a round collar and narrow sleeves. As soon as she came on the stage, she bowed to the crowd with her bright eyes, which immediately caused a burst of cheers. Li Yundong raised his head and saw that this beautiful woman was the tea lady who had been next to Zhang Yuming before. This tea lady was the first to appear on the stage because of the black box operation, so she naturally had a great advantage. She first carried her own tea set to the stage, placed it on the waist-high mahogany table, and then showed it to the audience one by one. At this time, there was a special cameraman on the stage. The camera was facing the table, and there was a huge plasma TV screen at the back of the stage, so that the audience could clearly see the close-up scene of the tea lady performing the tea art. Li Yundong looked over and saw that the tea chosen by the tea lady was Taiping Monkey King. He couldn't help asking, "Strange. Isn't this tea lady representing Zhang Yuming? Isn't Zhang Yuming Tai Guanyin? Why is she using Taiping Monkey King? What kind of tea is this?" Zhou Qin was born in a wealthy family and knew a lot about tea culture. She said, "Taiping Monkey King is also a famous tea in China. Together with Westlake Longjing, Huangshan Maofeng, and Wui Dahong Pao, It is the exclusive imperial tea of the State Council. Let's go. 7K. Oath M. Zhang Yuming has the temperament of a nouveau riche and specializes in Tai Guanyin. Although Tai Guanyin also has the best tea, there is still a certain gap between it and Taiping Monkey King, Westlake Longjing, Huangshan Maofeng, and Wui De Hong Pao. Therefore, if they don't want to be at a disadvantage in terms of tea, they must choose Taiping Monkey King to fight. Zi Yuan, who was standing to one side, nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, although this Taiping Monkey King has not been famous recently, it is still a great tea, especially the mother tea produced by the authentic monkey pit. It is even more valuable, not inferior to my Huangshan Maofeng. Moreover, just by listening to its name, you can tell that it has the character Kuei in it. Naturally, it's a great tea." While everyone was talking, the tea lady moved gracefully and lit a bunch of incense on an incense burner next to her. Xueqi explained, "The tea arts of China's black tea, green tea, and oolong tea are different. Taiping Monkey King belongs to green tea, so according to the green tea art, the first procedure is to light incense and burn the incense burner to get rid of delusion." At this time, the tea lady on the stage gently washed each teacup with water. Xueqi said, "This is the second set of procedures, called Wash the Cup of Ice Heart to go to the mortal world." Hearing this, Zi Yuan couldn't help but look at Xueqi up and down. She smiled and said, "Do you know a lot about tea art?" Xueqi smiled slightly and said, "It's not a study. It's just that there are some good mechanical tribute tea all year round. I've come into contact with some in my spare time before." Zi Yuan chuckled and said to Li Yundong, "You've accepted a good disciple." Li Yundong laughed and waved his hand. "You're flattering me." While they were talking and laughing, they saw the tea lady performing all the way. She had already performed the fifth procedure, moistening the lotus heart with sweet tea dew. She poured water into the teacups placed on the square table and made tea. At this time, Xueqi suddenly said, "Here comes the highlight." Li Yundong's spirit was lifted and he looked at the stage. At this time, those who knew about tea art all looked at the tea lady with their eyes wide open. Xueqi explained softly and quickly, "This is the sixth procedure of the green tea art, also known as the 3 nods to the water phoenix. It's one of the procedures of all the tea art, and it's also the one that tests one's skills the most." Li Yundong saw the tea lady lift the teapot high and let the water pour straight down. Then, she used the strength of her wrist to lift it up and down and pour water into it. She repeated this 3 times, turning the tea leaves in the water. At this time, the slow motion of the tea lady performing the 3 nods of the phoenix kung fu appeared on the plasma screen. The tea lady's elbow and wrist were flat, and her wrist was soft and boneless. The water splashed down like silver satin. Everyone saw the sound of water 3 times loud and 3 times soft, the water line 3 times thick and 3 times thin, the water flow 3 times high and 3 times low, and the water flow 3 times up and down in the pot 3 times. The movements of the 3 nods of the phoenix were surprisingly consistent. In the end, the amount of tea in these tea bowls was exactly the same, as if it had been carefully calculated. At this time, the audience under the stage could see the key points clearly. They let out a burst of exclamation, and applause and cheers rang out at the same time. Zi Yuan also smiled faintly and nodded slightly. "Not bad. You've worked hard." Although Su Chan and Ruan Hongling despised the dirty and despicable behavior of the organizer, they had to admit that the tea lady was indeed very good at tea art. The 3 nods of the phoenix just now could be called a unique skill. The tea lady also knew that she had performed very well. The next performance was like flowing clouds and flowing water, becoming more and more smooth and confident. When she finished her performance and stepped off the stage, the audience immediately burst into thunderous applause. The referee, who was tasting tea, also nodded and praised her. Chen Wankai even showed a look of appreciation and exclaimed, "Not bad, good tea art." The tea lady who appeared first won the first prize and won a full house. The pressure on the tea ladies who appeared next suddenly increased. Although some of them also performed well, no one could surpass the tea lady who appeared first. Some people even made mistakes in nervousness, causing the referee on the referee's seat to frown secretly. After performing all the way, it was finally time for Wui De Hong Pao, the top scholar in tea art, to appear. A plain-looking but arrogant girl jumped onto the stage with a rocket-like cannon. The arena was 1.5 meters high. Ordinary people with little strength might not be able to climb up, but she had pulled herself up from the ground. Suddenly, the sleepy audience under the stage was refreshed and applauded. For a moment, the host on the stage was a little embarrassed, so he had to say in a hurry, "The next contestant is Lin Xueqi from Wuidahongpao. Please welcome her." Lin Xueqi stood proudly and said something amazing as soon as she opened her mouth. "Today, I want to show everyone what real tea art is." She was young, so when she spoke, there was an uproar under the stage. Someone sneered and said, "You're so young, but you're so arrogant." The referee on the referee's seat showed a disapproving look. Only Chen Wankai chuckled and said, "What a young hero." Everyone saw that Lin Xueqing's tone was amazing, and the tea she chose was also extremely expensive, top-grade Dahongpao, so they stopped making noise for a while and waited to see her make a fool of herself. Li Yundong and the others also stared at her with their eyes wide open. Ruan Hongling and Su Chan kept muttering, constantly cursing the arrogant girl for making a fool of herself. Li Yundong saw that Lin Xueqing's tea art procedure was different from before, so he asked curiously, "She seems to be different from the others." Zhou Qin said to Li Yundong in a low voice, "This Wuidahongpao is an oolong tea. The tea art procedure of oolong tea is different from that of green tea. They are preparing for use, respectfully inviting people to sit down, burning incense to calm the atmosphere, peacock spreading its tail, Mengchen bathing in the rain, high mountain flowing water, black dragon entering the palace, 100 zhong flying waterfall, spring breeze brushing the face, jade liquid moving pot, sweet dew, and phoenix 3 nods." Li Yundong asked, "Is there also phoenix 3 nods?" Zhou Qin said, "Yes, this is an extremely important part of the tea art. Let's see how she performs." The two of them were whispering to each other when they saw Lin Xueqing performing skillfully all the way. However, she had been too arrogant before, so everyone was prejudiced and felt that it was nothing special. Some people even booed her loudly. But Lin Xueqing didn't care. She suddenly held the teapot beside her in the palm of her hand and said loudly, "The water made by ordinary fire is ordinary after all. Look at the water made by the wooming fire to make this tea." She held the teapot high in one hand, and her whole body seemed to have frozen for a moment, not moving at all. Seeing her strange posture, the audience burst into laughter and teased her, "Is this your tea art? It's so funny. It's so ugly. Wooming fire? I'm so angry with you. Get off the stage." While the audience was clamoring, the teapot in Lin Xueqing's hand suddenly emitted bursts of white qi. The white qi rolled on the arena, and in an instant, it formed the shape of a phoenix, which was lifelike and dreamlike. Everyone was stunned and speechless for a moment. Zi Yuan was also shocked. Zi Yuan's expression also changed. She exclaimed, "Condensing qi into form. She's amazing. Only after cultivating the yin qi in her body into pure yang qi can she control her qi so well. This is the top realm of the yang spirit. No wonder she's so arrogant." Lin Xueqing held the teapot and shook her wrist. The phoenix, which was made of steam, nodded. Immediately, a stream of hot water gushed out of the mouth of the phoenix, which was the mouth of the teapot. Everyone felt that this stream of water was like water from the ninth heaven falling from the sky. The water surged in the teacup, and a mist rolled out, echoing with the phoenix, making it look more and more dreamy. The sound of water in the teacup was like the chorus of birds, and all birds were paying homage to the phoenix. Everyone stared blankly at Lin Xueqing shaking her wrist 3 times, and the phoenix nodded 3 times. The tea bowls on the tea table were also filled to the brim. 3 bowls of Wuidahongpao tea were filled to the brim. Lin Xueqing's move shocked everyone present. Shan Wankai stood up excitedly and said loudly, "I didn't expect to see the real phoenix nodding 3 times here. Good. Bring it over and let me have a taste." Immediately, an MC in a cheongsam came up and brought the tea to the judges. The other judges tasted it and were all full of praise. Shan Wankai even praised it 3 times in a row. Good, good, good. At this time, almost everyone in the field reacted, and their cheers shook the sky. Li Yundong and Zhou Qin looked shocked. They looked at each other and were secretly shocked. Only Zi Yuan's face was as dark as water, and there was a faint worry in her eyes. She thought to herself, Lin Xueqing is performing tea art with her cultivation skills. Not only is her tea art exquisite, but her cultivation skills are also not inferior to mine. I wonder if I can beat her? // 785462789541. Chapter 312. Go to Watch Network. Lin Xueqing's subversive performance not only impressed the audience, but even Li Yundong couldn't help but say in surprise, "Can cultivation be used to perform tea art?" Ruan Hongling looked at Zi Yuan worriedly. She opened her mouth, but swallowed the words in her mouth. Go to watch. 7K. Oath M. At this time, Lin Xueqing, who was on the stage, cupped her fists and then left the stage. The host came up to say a few opening remarks. When she was about to step off the stage, she bumped into the tea table and almost staggered, causing the audience to burst into laughter. Her action was nothing, but when she stepped off the stage, the host cast a glance at Zhang Yuming. Zhang Yuming immediately understood and nodded secretly. The two of them had been looking at each other secretly, but Zhou Qin, who had been staring at the stage, noticed it. She felt that she hadn't cultivated yet, so she didn't know anything and couldn't help Li Yundong in any way. So she kept staring at the stage vigilantly. Seeing that the expressions of the two of them were not right, she immediately said, "Li Yundong, tell Ziyuan to be careful. I'm afraid that they might have done something to the table." Li Yundong was stunned and blurted out, "I know they are shameless, but they can't be that shameless, can they? How could they do something to the table?" He looked at Ziyuan, who had already come to the edge of the stage, and said in a low voice, "There's no way to remind her now. What should we do?" Ruan Hongling said, "Let me do it. I'll send a voice transmission to Sister Ziyuan." She said in a private voice transmission, "Sister Ziyuan, you have to pay attention to this tea table. I'm afraid that there's something wrong with it." Ziyuan was stunned, but her face remained calm. She just glanced in the direction of Li Yundong and the others and nodded slightly. After the host finished the introduction, Ziyuan held her own tea set, which was filled with teapots, and went to the stage gracefully. As soon as she appeared on the stage, her appearance and temperament were far better than that of the previous tea lady. Everyone under the stage suddenly gasped and was shocked by her amazing beauty. Even the most daring men didn't dare to have the slightest blasphemy in their minds when they saw her. The boldest one was just thinking in his heart, "Does such a beautiful and ethereal woman really belong to this world? What kind of man could be worthy of her?" At this time, Ziyuan was wearing a white dress, which had the classical charm of Han clothing and the modern atmosphere of modern fashion. She really looked like a fairy who had come from heaven to earth, which was amazing. Watch Net. Ziyuan held the plate and bowed to the audience below the stage. Then, she put the plate on the tea table in front of her. As soon as she put it down, the tea table suddenly tilted. Fortunately, Zhou Qin had discovered some clues before, and Ziyuan had been reminded again. She immediately poured out the zhenqi in her body silently and gently supported the foot of the tea table. She glanced around and saw that the foot of the tea table had been tampered with. There was a mechanism installed. As long as a switch was turned next to the tea table, the four corners of the tea table would immediately become extremely loose, and if something was placed on it, it would tilt. Because Ziyuan's reaction was extremely fast, the people under the stage did not notice the abnormality for a while. They only saw the tea table shake a little and then stabilize again. But at this time, all the zhenqi and energy in Ziyuan's body were used to support the tea table. If she wanted to perform the tea art calmly, it would be difficult. She immediately sent a voice transmission to Li Yundong for help. "Li Yundong, this table has indeed been tampered with. With a little strength it will tilt. Your zhenqi is strong. Hold this table in the air so that I can wave it." Li Yundong didn't know how to use voice transmission. Without saying a word, he immediately raised his palms in the air and lifted the table from a few meters away. As soon as Li Yundong's powerful Yuanyang genuine qi surged over, Ziyuan immediately felt a lot more at ease. She breathed a sigh of relief, took back her zhenqi, and began to concentrate on performing the tea art. Zhang Yuming, who was under the stage, saw that Ziyuan's tea table was placed on the tea table as stable as Mount Tai. He suddenly widened his eyes and looked at the host. The host was also stunned and made an innocent gesture, indicating that he had indeed done it. Only Zhong Qingsong, who was next to Zhang Yuming, saw the clues. He smiled slightly and walked toward Li Yundong. When he walked up to Li Yundong, he secretly used qi and slapped Li Yundong with his palm, saying, "Jinren Li, shall we shake hands?" Li Yundong was shocked and had to secretly withdraw his zhenqi. He turned around and slapped the other party's palm. With a bang, the two of them shook hands and immediately froze in place like stone statues. Go to see net. Kai 9811 Xue 0 net 6 at this time. Without the support of Li Yundong's Xueqi, the tea table suddenly tilted. Zi Yuan was quick to react. Xueqi immediately gushed out of her body and supported the tea table again. At the same time, she sent a voice transmission to Wan Hongling. Hongling, help, hurry up. Seeing that Zhong Qingsong was coming to make trouble for Li Yundong, Wan Hongling immediately gritted her teeth. The Xueqi in her body gushed out and supported the tea table. However, her Xueqi was not strong enough, and she couldn't hold it a few meters away. Su Chan, who was beside her, saw that the situation was not good. She didn't care that she didn't deal with Wan Hongling, so she immediately drove the Xueqi in her body to help. The two of them worked together to support the tea table. The secret battle on and off the stage only happened in the blink of an eye. The surrounding audience, even the cameras staring at the tea table, did not notice anything unusual. Only Lin Xueqing saw that Li Yundong and her master were secretly competing with Xueqi and internal qi. She frowned and walked over to separate the two of them. But when Li Yundong saw her coming over, he thought that Lin Xueqing also wanted to take advantage of the situation. He was angry in his heart. He snorted coldly and slapped Lin Xueqing with his other hand. Lin Xueqing was shocked and immediately fought back. Li Yundong turned his wrist and firmly clasped the other's wrist with his 5 fingers. Lin Xueqing did not show any weakness. She also turned her wrist, and her 5 fingers were like steel cables on Li Yundong's wrist. For a moment, Li Yundong was holding Lin Xueqing and Zhong Qingsong by himself. Zhong Qingsong was shocked to see that Li Yundong still had the strength to start another battle and drag Lin Xueqing into it when he was competing with his Xueqi with all his strength. He was shocked and horrified. Lin Xueqing was also shocked, but she was also unconvinced. She drove the pure yin qi in her body and Zhong Qingsong's pure yang qi to attack Li Yundong from both sides. Li Yundong only felt that half of his body was in a world of ice and snow, and the other half was in the scorching sun. It could be said that he was in a world of ice and fire. He took a deep breath and urged the majestic and vigorous Jindan's qi in his body to attack Zhong Qingsong and Lin Xueqing's bodies from the left and right. It was as if he was fighting with the Xueqi of the two at the same time. For a moment, he was not at a disadvantage. The three of them were fighting with their Xueqi. After a while, a line of white qi rose from the top of Li Yundong's head. At first, it was like a gossamer, but after a while, it rose and became as thick as a finger. Zhong Qingsong's face became redder and redder, like a drunken Guan Yu, while Lin Xueqing's face became paler and paler, like a thin piece of paper. Not long after, the three of them's abnormality was noticed by the surrounding audience, and they immediately began to talk about it. For a moment, whispers and whispers could be heard from below the stage, and more people's gazes were directed towards the three of them. Zi Yuan saw that the white qi above Li Yundong's head was becoming more and more vigorous, thicker and thicker, and it was condensed into the sky. She held the teapot in one hand and pressed the lid of the teapot with the other. She said in a clear voice, "Since Lin Xueqing has let everyone see the real 3 nods of the phoenix, today I will let everyone see the long-lost 8 immortals crossing the sea together." Zi Yuan's voice was bright and soft, attracting the attention of the audience again. Zi Yuan suddenly opened the lid of the teapot and grabbed the void in the air. The Xueqi in her body suddenly surged out and grabbed the white qi rising from the top of Li Yundong's head. Everyone saw that the white mist was flowing horizontally, like a Milky Way bridge. Zi Yuan held the teapot in her hand and quickly completed the 3 nods of the phoenix. Then, at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye, she used her 5 fingers as a pen. Her fingers flew up and down, quickly drawing and carving on the condensed mist in the air. After a while, Zi Yuan pecked, carved, painted, twisted, held, pinched, and cut. After a while, she drew an old man riding on the back of a donkey in the air, holding a wooden stick with a gourd hanging on it. She took a picture of him in the camera and then projected it on the plasma screen. His smile was lifelike. It was Zhang Guolao, one of the 8 immortals, riding a donkey upside down. At this time, both the referee on the stage and the audience were in an uproar. They were so shocked that they couldn't control themselves. After Zi Yuan finished drawing Zhang Guolao riding a donkey upside down, she turned her wrist and began to draw another character. After a while, everyone saw a middle-aged man with a bare chest and an iron crutch in his hand. It was Iron Crutch Li. At this time, everyone was already stunned. They saw Zi Yuan's fingers on the stage instantly draw a lifelike immortal from the illusory white qi. Her methods were like a miracle, and she was as elegant as a fairy. Later, Zi Yuan's hands flew left and right, drawing Han Zhongli, Lan Caihe, He Xiangu, Lu Dongbin, Han Xiangzi, and Chao Guojiu one by one. For a time, everyone could see the 8 immortals in the White Qi River in different postures. They were riding the clouds and the mist, as if they were going to cross the sea. Especially at this time, it was daytime. When the sun shone on the Qi River, it suddenly reflected light and formed a long line. It was really like an immortal descending to the world, dazzling everyone. At this time, there was another exclamation from the audience, and everyone was dumbfounded. After Zi Yuan finished drawing all the 8 immortals, she suddenly rolled up her sleeves gracefully and gently with one hand. Her other hand was like Buddha picking flowers. With a flick of her finger, she gently plucked the lifelike Zhang Guilao out of the long river of white qi. Then, with a flip of her wrist, she held one of the teacups in front of the tea tray. Suddenly, Zhang Guilao stayed on the cup of tea and did not dissipate for a while. Then, Zi Yuan, like the Queen Mother picking peaches, picked the other 7 immortals one by one and placed them on the teacups in front of her. Everyone saw that the 8 immortals were floating above the 8 bowls of tea. The tea in the bowls was emitting waves of hot air, making the 8 immortals look like they were in a fairyland. While they were watching in fascination, Zi Yuan suddenly waved her sleeve, and a gust of wind rose from her sleeve, immediately dispersing the mist. The illusory 8 immortals immediately surged and melted into the tea in the teacup. At this time, Zi Yuan stood gracefully on the stage and said to everyone on and off the stage, "Before, there was the 3 nods of the phoenix, and now the 8 immortals have crossed the sea together. Please comment on who is better." After she finished speaking, everyone looked at her in a daze. The scene was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. I'll take a bus back to Suzhou tonight. // 785462789541. Chapter 313. Go to watch net. After Zi Yuan showed off her kung fu, the audience on and off the stage were all dumbfounded for a moment. Only Chen Wankai was so excited that his face turned red. He suddenly stood up and walked toward the stage, trembling all over. His mouth kept trembling, and his eyes were fixed on the bowl of Huangshan Maofeng tea, which was floating with white smoke. After a long time, he said in a trembling voice, "This kind of tea art really should only exist in heaven. How many times can I hear it in the human world? Go to watch net." 7K. Oath M. Master, can drinking this tea make you immortal? Although Chen Wankai saw that Zi Yuan was not only beautiful, but also young and eloquent, he didn't dare to regard the person in front of him as a vase. He knew that only a grandmaster tea art master could have such a good work, so he respectfully called Zi Yuan master and didn't dare to offend her in the slightest. Zi Yuan smiled slightly and cupped her hands, saying, "I won't be able to achieve immortality, but I can rejuvenate my qi and focus my mind to prolong my life." There was a slight look of disappointment in Chen Wansai's eyes, but he soon became excited again and asked respectfully, "Can I have a taste?" Zi Yuan elegantly spread out a palm and gestured, "Go ahead." At this time, it was extremely quiet on and off the stage. Except for Li Yunyang, Zhong Qingsong, Lin Xueqi, and Su Chan, Ruan Hongling, who were using zhenqi to drag the tea table, everyone was staring at the stage and Chen Wankai eagerly. They couldn't wait to drag this old man down, then say a few words to this beautiful fairy and drink a bowl of immortal tea. Chen Wankai was so excited that his hands were trembling. He stretched out his hand to pick up the cup of tea from Zhang Guilao. As he held the teacup in his hand, it swayed in the air and splashed a lot of tea, causing many people under the stage to criticize him in their hearts. Shen Wankai brought the teacup to his mouth and carefully took a sip. Then, he raised his head and drank it all in one gulp. He only felt that when this cup of tea entered his throat, his entire body had heated up. His entire body was steaming hot and filled with strength. However, when the tea reached his stomach, there was a coolness and fragrance in this heat, making him feel relaxed and refreshed. Even Chen Wankai himself didn't know whether it was because Zi Yuan's previous methods were so amazing that he had a strong psychological suggestion that he could transcend the mortal world and become a saint after drinking this bowl of immortal tea, or that this bowl of Huangshan Maofeng was really fragrant and elegant, which was unparalleled in the world. After Chen Wankai drank a cup of tea, he couldn't help but burst into tears. After staying on the stage for a long time, he let out a long sigh and said in a choked voice, "I've lived for most of my life and been to countless places. This is the first time I've seen such a tea art that only immortals have. This is the first time I've drunk the immortal tea that only immortals can drink. Only today do I feel that my life has not been in vain." Watch net. Color 9811 Xueqi net 6. Some of the audience below the stage didn't know Chen Wansai's identity, and only felt that this old man was a little neurotic. However, the referee on the stage and Zhang Yuming were very clear about Chen Wansai's background and strength. This old man started from scratch at the age of 16. When he was in his 20s, he had traveled all over the country. When he was in his 30s, he went south to Shenzhen and finally made his first bucket of gold in Shenzhen. From then on, he went out of control and established a large light industry group that spread all over the country. At the age of 50, he moved the group's headquarters back to his hometown of Tiannan City. He was warmly welcomed by the municipal government and became a tyrant in Tiannan City. His name not only resounded like thunder in the business world of Tiannan City, but also resounded in other provinces and cities. Those who knew Chen Wankai knew that this old man had single-handedly created a business kingdom. His business was spread all over Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. He had experienced countless storms, victories, and losses in his life. Not only had his character been tempered to be as tough as iron, but he had also cultivated a proud, arrogant, and domineering character. It was impossible for ordinary people to say a word or two to him, let alone receive such praise. When Zi Yuan saw that he was drinking tea with tears rolling down his face, she smiled and said, "Happiness hurts the heart, and sadness fills the lungs. Old people must maintain a calm state of mind when drinking tea. Otherwise, if they are not in a good mood, it will be useless to drink any elixir or medicine." Chen Wankai was usually called Mr. Shen, Old Master Shen, and so on. When had he ever been called an old man by a young man? Shen Yu and Shen Hui, who were watching from the backstage, were shocked at the same time. They thought to themselves, "Oh no, father is going to get angry. He hates people saying that he is old the most." However, when Chen Wankai heard Zi Yuan say that he was an old man, he surprisingly didn't get angry. Instead, he let out a long sigh and said, "Yes, you're right. I just drank this bowl of tea for nothing." After he finished speaking, he looked at Zi Yuan again and said with a flattering smile, "Can I have another cup?" Chen Wansai's identity was not an ordinary person. He was a judge and a business tycoon. When he said this, the audience below the stage all cursed in their hearts. The referee on the stage was even more resentful. "If you drink, won't we have one less cup to drink? Let us have a taste of this immortal tea." Zi Yuan didn't know what they were thinking, so she smiled at Chen Wankai and said, "H'anjino." Chen Wankai was overjoyed and immediately picked up another cup of tea, as if he had found a treasure. This time, he didn't drink it in one gulp. Instead, he tasted it carefully and slowly. He sighed and recited a poem. "The people of you left me the tea of Shanxi, and I picked the golden buds and poured them into the golden tripod. Go to see the net." 7K. Oath M. The pure porcelain is snow white and fragrant. How can it be like the elixir of immortals? Zi Yuan smiled and said, "One drink washes away my drowsiness, and my feelings fill the world. Another drink clears my spirit, and suddenly it's like flying rain sprinkling light dust. 3 drinks and I can get the Tao. Why bother to get rid of troubles?" When Chen Wankai saw that Zi Yuan actually knew this extremely rare tea drinking poem, he was immediately surprised and happy. He laughed and said in a somewhat shameless manner, "Since 3 drinks can help me achieve the Tao, then I still need 1 more cup." This time, Zi Yuan didn't say anything. The audience below the stage couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "You old man, you're really thick-skinned. 2 cups are not enough. You want a 3rd cup? You're too shameless. That's right. Hurry up and go down." Chen Wankai wasn't angry. He smiled and cupped his hands. He waved to the judges on the stage and said, "Everyone, come and have a taste." As soon as he called out, the other judges dared to get down from their seats and come to the tea table to taste the tea. Some of them had a little bit of knowledge in their stomachs. After drinking it, they shook their heads and praised it. Some of them didn't have much knowledge in their stomachs, so they kept shouting praises. Zhang Yuming, who was watching from below the stage, took advantage of the chaos on the stage and squeezed his way up. Just as he reached out to take the last cup of tea, Chen Wankai suddenly said, "Mr. Zhang, can you let me have this cup of tea?" Zhang Yuming's outstretched hand suddenly froze in mid-air. He raised his head and looked at Chen Wankai, forcing a dry smile on his face. Chen Wankai leaned forward, tilted his head, and glanced at him sideways. "What? You don't want to?" Zhang Yuming was shocked by Chen Wankai's gaze, and his hand immediately retracted as if it had been electrocuted. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Don't mention it. Old Master Shen wants to drink tea. How dare I snatch it?" Shen Wankai chuckled. He turned his head and looked at the other judges. "Do you have any objections?" He seemed to be asking, but these people didn't dare to say no. They shook their heads one after another and flattered him. "We are just half immortals who have drunk 2 cups of tea. Old Master Shen, you have drunk 3 cups in a row, so you are an immortal. Instead of having one more half immortal, it is better to have one more immortal. We can also follow the chickens and dogs to heaven together." Chen Wankai laughed and said, "I'm not an immortal." He pointed at Zi Yuan and said, "This is an immortal." As he said this, he cupped his hands and bowed to Zi Yuan, then picked up the teacup and said loudly to the audience below the stage, "Since everyone wants me to drink, I will drink it." Seeing that the old man was so thick-skinned, the audience laughed and scolded him one after another. Chen Wankai didn't care what they said. He raised his head and drank the 3rd cup in one gulp. The other people on the stage looked at him and saw that his cup was as clean as if it had been washed. There was not a drop of tea left. Although they were smiling, they felt lost in their hearts. Zhang Yuming, in particular, looked at the empty teacup and thought to himself, "As the organizer of such a tea culture and art competition, I can't even drink a sip of this immortal tea. What's going on?" Seeing that Chen Wankai had finished drinking, Zi Yuan smiled and said, "Since the tea has been drunk, please comment on who is in first place." After she said this, Zhang Yuming suddenly shivered and hurriedly winked at Chen Wankai. However, Chen Wankai acted as if he hadn't seen it. After drinking 3 bowls of tea, he calmed down again. He looked at Zi Yuan with interest and suddenly asked, "Why didn't you ask me this question first when I was about to drink the 3rd bowl of tea just now? If you had asked me at that time, I would have definitely said that you were first. Aren't you afraid that I will change my mind now that I have finished drinking the tea?" Zi Yuan smiled faintly and said, "Justice is in the hearts of the people. If you can speak against your conscience, then this immortal tea will become ordinary water. Even if you have become an immortal, you will become immortal. As the saying goes, Zhenren doesn't lie. That's exactly what I mean." Chen Wankai laughed, clapped his hands and said loudly, "Well said. You will definitely be first. If you don't get first place, I, Chen Wankai, will be the first to disagree." As soon as he spoke, the other judges who were looking at him eagerly also said, "Zi Yuan should be first." Zhang Yuming's legs and stomach trembled when he heard this, and his face turned ashen. He was so angry in his heart that he thought, "You old B*****, how can you be so generous with my money? This is a competition held by me, and I paid for the prize money. In the end, I didn't even get a sip of the immortal tea, but I have to pay 2 million yuan? What kind of F***king logic is this?" Zhang Yuming burst into tears in his heart. He felt that this was the most tragic thing in the world, but the most tragic thing was that he actually had to pretend to smile and then loudly announce that Zi Yuan was the first in the competition. What kind of world was this? Was there any justice? Was there any law? However, Zhang Yuming was not a simple person. The moment his face froze, he immediately squeezed out a smile. Then with a look of joy and honor he said loudly, "Congratulations to Miss Zi Yuan and her contestant, Huangshan Maofeng, for winning the first place in the competition." Seeing this, Su Chan and Ruan Hongling couldn't help but sigh. They only felt that this person was thick-skinned and changed his expression so quickly, which was really rare in the world. As soon as Zhang Yuming announced the result loudly on the stage, there was a burst of thunderous cheers from the audience. In this burst of cheers, the winner of the competition between Li Yundong, Zhong Qingsong, and Lin Xueqi was suddenly decided. Li Yundong was fighting 1 against 2, but he was not at a disadvantage at all. Although Zhong Qingsong and Lin Xueqi were both in the yang spirit yuanying phase, the zhenqi in their bodies was not comparable to Li Yundong's Jindan's qi, so they were suppressed by him. Li Yundong was secretly fighting with the two of them, but at the same time, he was listening in all directions. When he heard that Zi Yuan had won the first place, he immediately felt relieved. He didn't want to quarrel with the two of them in front of everyone, so he said, "The winner has been decided on the stage. Do we have to see life and death before we stop?" At this time, Zhong Qingsong and Lin Xueqi had used all their strength to resist Li Yundong's magnificent zhenqi. They were in a state of full concentration. Not to mention speaking, it was extremely difficult for them to even move their eyes. However, they saw that Li Yundong could still speak in the situation of 1 against 2. His voice was as clear as usual. They were suddenly shocked. Li Yundong looks like he is only 20 years old. Why is the zhenqi in his body so strong? How can he still have the strength to speak when fighting 1 against 2? Even if he had started cultivating in his mother's womb, he could never have cultivated to such a level. Starting from tomorrow, at 3 o'clock a day, and then until the 30th, 7 days, // 785462789541. Chapter 3:14. Go to watch net. Li Yundong saw the fear in their eyes, so he said, "If this goes on, both sides will definitely suffer. In public, no one can get away with it. Why don't we each take a step back? What do you think?" As he spoke, he withdrew a little zhenqi. Go to watch net. Kai 9811 Shui 0 net 6. As soon as he withdrew his zhenqi, Zhong Qingsong and Lin Xueqi immediately breathed a sigh of relief, as if the mountain above their heads had been lifted half an inch and they could breathe. They also withdrew a little zhenqi. Seeing that they were returning the favor, Li Yundong knew that the two of them didn't want to make a big deal out of this. He tentatively took back some zhenqi. The three of them took back a little, and I also took back a little. Slowly, all three of them took back their zhenqi. The three of them stopped. Zhong Qingsong looked at Li Yundong in shock and asked involuntarily, "Who is your master? How did you cultivate such strong and condensed zhenqi? It's absolutely impossible for the Fox Zen School to teach you such cultivation kung fu." In the cultivation world, it was taboo to inquire about other people's sex and cultivation methods. Zhong Qingsong's question was very abrupt and rude. If he hadn't been extremely surprised and lost his composure, he would never have said it. Li Yundong's cultivation kung fu had been introduced to him by Su Chan and taught by Zi Yuan. How could he be willing to tell them his secret? He just glanced at Zhong Qingsong and said lightly, "I don't have a master." Zhong Qingsong naturally didn't believe it, but he couldn't do anything to Li Yundong. The cultivation world and the martial arts world were very similar in that whoever had the strongest cultivation had the right to speak. Since ancient times, there had been no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. If scholars wanted to compete, they would bicker for hundreds of years and still not be able to tell who was better. However, the cultivation world was not like this. If anyone was not convinced, they could fight until they were convinced. No matter what, there would be a first place and a second place. Why was the Zhengyi school strong? Because the predecessor of Zhengyi school was the 5 pecks of rice sect founded by Zhang Ling. This sect had flourished since the Han Dynasty and the Three Kingdoms period. Each generation was more capable than the last, and it had more than 100,000 disciples. During the period of Emperor Zhenzong of the Song Dynasty, the emperor summoned Zhang Zhengsui, the Taoist master of Zhengyi school, and from then on established the supreme position of Zhengyi school as the leader of the Holy Land of the Three Mountains. The cultivation sects in the world knew that they were no match for the Zhengyi school alone. Therefore, they created a loose organization of the 6 sects in an attempt to resist the expansion of the Zhengyi school. The strength that Li Yundong had shown at this time really frightened Zhong Qingsong of the Pine Valley Cottage in Mount Huangshan. He felt that his Pine Valley Cottage was not a big sect like the Zhengyi school, and it was not even as good as any of the 6 sects. Although his sect controlled the tea garden business near Mount Huangshan and had some money, when it came to fighting, only Zhong Qingsong and Lin Xueqi could fight. The others were just bystanders. Lin Xueqi was also clear about this. She was already convinced by Li Yundong's kung fu. She thought to herself, no wonder he could repel so many people from the 6 great sects alone. I thought most of the people from the 6 great sects were idiots. Now it seems that Li Yundong really has his own uniqueness. But even though she thought this in her heart, she refused to admit it. She didn't dare to make trouble for Li Yundong again, but she glanced at Zi Yuan in the arena. Go to the watch net. 7K. Oath M. At this time, the situation on the arena had been decided. The MC was about to give Zi Yuan the award when Lin Xueqi suddenly shouted, "I don't accept it." Everyone present heard her loud shout clearly, and for a moment, everyone's gaze turned towards her. Lin Xueqi was not afraid. She jumped into the arena, pointed at Zi Yuan with one hand, and said loudly, "I don't accept it. I didn't lose to you but to him." As she said this, she pointed at Li Yundong. Everyone's eyes turned to Li Yundong in unison, and they were puzzled. They didn't understand why Lin Xueqi said that she had lost to someone who was not participating in the competition, and not to someone who was participating in the competition on the stage. Chen Wankai, who was on the stage, frowned, and there was a thoughtful expression on his face. Some people couldn't understand this, so they all booed. If you lose, you have to admit it. If you can't afford to lose, don't participate in the competition. Lin Xueqi had been spoiled by her master for many years, so she had never been humiliated like this. Her face turned red for a moment, and she said loudly, "If it weren't for Li Zhanren." Before she could say the words Li Zhanren, Zhong Qingsong suddenly shouted and interrupted her, "Qinger, shut up." His loud shout made everyone's ears buzz, and they felt a sharp pain. Everyone unconsciously covered their ears and grimaced in pain. Zhong Qingsong jumped onto the stage, glared at her sternly, and said in a low voice, "Don't you think you've caused enough trouble? Come with me." After that, he bowed slightly to Chen Wankai and Zhang Yuming on the stage to express his apology, and then dragged Lin Xueqi off the stage. When everyone saw that Lin Xueqi had been taken away by Zhong Qingsong, they also ridiculed and added insult to injury. Zhang Yuming saw that they didn't have time to collect the prize money and trophy for the second place. He was sad but also a little happy. Now I can save some prize money. At this time, the attention of the audience shifted from Li Yundong back to Zi Yuan on the stage. They didn't know that Li Yundong, Zhong Qingsong, and Lin Xueqi had secretly carried out a thrilling and fierce battle. Some people who were closer to them only saw the three of them shake hands for a while, and then let go of each other. They didn't know that so many things had happened. Not long after, the host and the MC began to award certificates and bonuses to the winners. 2 million was a huge sum of money. Naturally, it could not be in cash, and it was also impossible to write a check on the spot. Therefore, a symbolic giant cardboard was drawn on it, with the number 2 million written on it. When Zi Yuan received the award on the stage, she still looked calm. Especially after she received the award and stepped off the stage, Ruan Hongling and Su Chan saw that they no longer needed to spend zhenqi to support the tea table, so they withdrew their zhenqi at the same time. The tea table collapsed with a loud bang. Watch net. For a moment, there was another uproar under the stage. Some people saw that as soon as Zi Yuan left the stage, the tea table collapsed with a loud bang, and the teapot and teacups were smashed into pieces. It was as if as soon as the tea fairy left, the tea table and teapot no longer needed to stay in the world, lest they dirty themselves. Everyone was so excited that they began to talk about Zi Yuan, and some people even focused on the background of Zi Yuan. Chen Wankai, who was on the stage, stared at Zi Yuan. He saw that when Zi Yuan walked to Li Yundong and the others, she was talking with him very closely, and there was a rare smile on her face. Obviously, she was very close to this man. Chen Wankai was shocked. Is this boy Zi Yuan's boyfriend? Who is he to be worthy of such a fairy-like figure? Chen Wankai cast a meaningful glance at Li Yundong. He wanted to go up and talk to him, but the occasion was not right. There were too many people, so he resisted the idea and walked off the stage. As soon as he reached the backstage, he saw Shen Yu and Shen Hui, who had been waiting impatiently, surrounding him. Shen Yu couldn't wait to say, "Dad, why did you give the first place to that guy? Didn't I tell you already?" Chen Wankai glanced at his son and asked calmly, "Oh? Why can't I give it to that guy?" Shen Yu waved his hands and said loudly, "That woman is in cahoots with that bastard Li Yundong." Chen Wankai was secretly unhappy, but he still didn't show his emotions. He asked, "Who is Li Yundong? How did he offend you?" Shan Hui wanted to add fuel to the fire, but she was keenly aware that her father seemed to be a little unhappy, so she cleverly closed her mouth again. Only Shen Yu didn't notice it at all. He still said loudly, "It's the bastard who stole my woman." Chen Wansai's face was as dark as water. He nodded and said non-committally, "Well, I see. Come with me." As he spoke, he walked forward. At this time, Shen Hui had already concluded that her father was angry. But her brother didn't notice it at all. He was still following Chen Wankai, talking about how he had been bullied and blaming Chen Wankai for giving the first place to Zi Yuan. Shen Hui snickered in her heart and was ready to watch a good show later. Chen Wankai didn't respond at all along the way. He just walked into the cultural palace with his children. Along the way, he met acquaintances and greeted them warmly. When he came to a spacious office, he waited for Shen Yu and Shen Hui to enter the door and said in a deep voice, "Go close the door." Shen Hui cleverly took the initiative to close the door, but Shen Yu still kept talking to Chen Wankai. "Dad, hurry up and tell them. Maybe we can take back the first place. I just don't like that guy. Before he could finish his words, Chen Wankai suddenly became furious and slapped Shen Yu in the face. The slap was so hard that Shen Yu's body tilted and he almost fell to the ground. Shen Yu was stunned by this slap. His ears were buzzing, and his mind was blank. There was only one thought left in his mind. "Why did you hit me?" Chen Wankai cursed angrily. "You be *****. You only know how to flirt with girls all day long. I can turn a blind eye to you playing with women, but last time I asked you to come to Dongwu City to do some business, you actually saw a woman and stayed for more than 10 days, causing the business to be ruined. I, Chen Wankai, had to personally apologize to her with a smile. Only then did I get this business back." Shen Yu covered his burning cheeks and said loudly, "Why did you ask me to do such a small business? Can't you just send a project manager?" Chen Wankai was so angry that his whole body was trembling. "You can't even do a small business. Do you want to do a big business? Don't you know that I started my business from a small one?" Shen Yu straightened his neck and scolded loudly. "What era is it now? How can it be compared with the past? This business in Dongwu City is not even enough for my monthly pocket money. You still ask me to do it. You obviously look down on me. Besides, if it fails, then so be it. It's not a big deal. Our Shin family doesn't care about such a small business. Why do you have to apologize?" Shen Wankai was furious and slapped him again. However, this time Shen Yu was prepared. He raised his hand and blocked it. When Shen Wankai saw that he had blocked it, he became even angrier and slapped him in the face. This time, Shen Yu did not dare to block it head-on. He just protected his face and stiffened his neck to take a few hits. Chen Wankai scolded as he hit him. "I've told you so many times that the most important thing in business is reputation and credibility. Although the business is small, it can ruin my reputation. Do you know how much effort it will take for me to make up for it with just one sentence from you?" He was old, and he was so angry that he was panting for a moment. Shen Hui, who was standing to one side, saw that Shan Yu had been taught a lesson. She patted Chen Wansai's back and carefully comforted him, secretly laughing in her heart. However, Chen Wankai suddenly turned his head and said to Shen Hui, "You, go and find Li Yundong and Zi Yuan for me." Shen Hui was shocked. "Why do you want to find them?" Chen Wankai said angrily. "Look at you two disappointing things. One of you only knows how to buy famous brands and squander money all day long, and the other knows how to flirt with girls all day long. Sooner or later, the foundation of the Shen family will be ruined by you two bastards. I'll find them to be your teachers and let you know how to cultivate your character, so that you won't go out and squander money all day long." Shen Hui didn't expect that in the end, her enemy would become her teacher. She was shocked and subconsciously wanted to refute loudly, but she suddenly saw Chen Wansai's sharp eyes staring at her. She was shocked and immediately reacted. She avoided the truth and said, "Dad, even if you want to invite a teacher, can't you invite the beautiful woman who makes tea? Why do you have to hire that Li Yundong? What ability does he have to teach me?" Chen Wankai looked like a rotten wood that could not be carved. "You really have big breasts and no brains. Has all the fat on your body flowed into your head? What do you mean by a beauty who makes tea? That's called tea art. Do you know tea art? It's something passed down by our ancestors for more than 1,000 years. It's a priceless treasure. Shen Hui, you usually boast that you are smart, but why are you so stupid at such a critical moment?" Zi Yuan had a saintly temperament. Obviously, she was not an ordinary person. With her beauty and temperament, she could be friends with Li Yundong. What did this mean? This means that Li Yundong is definitely not an ordinary person. This is called birds of a feather flock together. Do you understand? As he said this, he turned to Xueqi and said with a look of exasperation, "Don't think that you can look down on everyone in the world just because you are born into a good family. There are many capable people in the world. If you didn't have me as your father, who the f***ck are you?" He was talking fiercely, but he saw that Xueqi was dawdling and unwilling to move, so he said angrily, "What's going on? Do you want me to invite you?" Xueqi was furious in her heart, and she vented her anger on Li Yundong. She thought to herself, "Every time this bastard meets me, nothing good happens. Damn it, damn it." Just as she was walking to the door, she suddenly saw a person knock on the door twice, then push it open and enter. Chen Wankai saw that the outsider had pushed the door open and come in. He was about to lose his temper, but when he saw that the person was his secretary, his anger immediately subsided. He said in a deep voice, "What's the matter?" The secretary carefully pointed to the phone and said, "Mr. Chen, you're on the phone." Chen Wankai took the phone and said, "It's me, Chen Wankai." After answering the phone, he said to Xueqi, who had been dawdling at the door, "Forget it, don't go. I'll hire them with a big gift when I have the chance next time. It's not dignified to go now." Xueqi was overjoyed. She immediately ran to Chen Wankai and massaged his back and shoulders with a smile. "Dad, I told you it's not good." Chen Wankai didn't expose her little daughter's thoughts. He just snorted coldly. He looked at Xueqi, who was looking at him with resentment in his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "Go home now. You're not allowed to leave the house for a month. All your account numbers will be frozen. I'll let you know how ordinary people live, so that you won't go out and make trouble all day long." After that, he nodded to the respectful secretary next to him and then walked out the door. Xueqi turned around and looked at Xueqi sympathetically, then slipped out. Only Xueqi was panting heavily in the room, and the anger in his eyes was getting stronger and stronger. After a while, he suddenly roared, "I'm not convinced. I'm your son. How can you treat me like this?" Xueqi paced back and forth in the room like a raging beast, clenching his fists and trembling all over. The more he thought about it, the more he blamed everything on Li Yundong. He roared loudly, "Li Yundong, I won't let you off easily. Group 1 to 7 is full. Please add group 81289854977 / 785462789541. Chapter 315. Go to watch net. Li Yundong naturally didn't know what had happened backstage. When he saw Zi Yuan coming down from the stage, he went up to her with a smile, cupped his hands, and said, "Congratulations, Zhenren Zi Yuan, for coming back victorious." Su Chan also joined in the fun. She cupped her hands and said, "Congratulations." Her eyes were fixed on the huge check in Zi Yuan's hand. Go to watch net. Seeing her like this, Li Yundong couldn't help laughing and said, "Look at your silly face. This is fake. You can only get the money backstage when it's over." Su Chan didn't care and said to Li Yundong excitedly, "Are we rich now?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "If we have money, we will spend it immediately. We can't keep it in our hands." Su Chan stared at the fake check, as if she was afraid that it would run away in the next second. She said in a daze, "How much is 2 million? How long do I have to count?" Li Yundong laughed and reached out to pinch Su Chan's cheek. "You're a money grubber." Ruan Hongling couldn't help saying, "Hey, this seems to be the money my Xueqi won. How did it become yours?" Although Su Chan and Ruan Hongling had fought together before, she didn't show any weakness at this time. She snorted and said, "If it weren't for my Yundong's spirit reaches to the rainbow, would she have been able to transform into the 8 immortals crossing the sea?" Seeing that the two of them were about to quarrel again, Zi Yuan immediately said, "Don't quarrel. This is a prize that we can only get by working together. We can't get it without any one of us." Ruan Hongling and Su Chan looked at each other, snorted, and turned their heads away. Zhou Qin was quick-witted. She found a topic and said to Li Yundong, "By the way, why did Lin Xueqing say that she didn't admit defeat? She said that she didn't lose to Zhenren Zi Yuan, but to you?" Ruan Hongling opened her mouth and was about to speak angrily. Zi Yuan was afraid that she would say something bad, so she rushed to say, "In fact, the reason is very simple. Previously, she manipulated the womanjai fire to boil the water in the teapot, and then used Xueqi to control the white qi to transform it into the shape of a phoenix. Although it was only a rough outline and not very detailed, in terms of Xueqi control, she has reached the realm of yang spirit of Yuanying. She is not inferior to me at all. When I saw Li Yundong fighting with the master of the Pine Valley Cottage and his disciple, white qi was continuously coming out of the top of Li Yundong's head. This white qi was the zhenqi that only those with extremely vigorous zhenqi could produce. Because this zhenqi was not as loose and easy to dissipate as ordinary steam, I used this zhenqi to make the 8 immortals crossing the sea. Moreover, the 8 immortals could stay on the teacup and not dissipate. They were lifelike. In comparison, I naturally had a great advantage. Watch net. 7K. Oath M. Cultivators are well aware of this, but the audience and the referee on the stage don't understand it, so it's natural for Lin Xueqi to be unconvinced. Zhou Qin had just asked casually, but after Zi Yuan's explanation, she realized that Lin Xueqi was not making trouble for no reason, but it was true. For a moment, she opened her mouth in surprise and looked at Li Yundong. When Li Yundong saw her looking over, he said with a smile, "In fact, if Zhenren Zi Yuan's control of zhenqi was not exquisite, no matter how vigorous my zhenqi was, it would be useless." Zhou Qin looked at Zi Yuan and then at Li Yundong, secretly admiring and envious of them. Seeing that Li Yundong and Zi Yuan were praising each other, Guan Hongling couldn't help but say, "Well, you two don't have to flatter each other. It's so disgusting." Zi Yuan glared at Guan Hongling and said angrily, "Hongling, you're getting more and more outrageous." Li Yundong coughed dryly and changed the topic. "I wonder when we can get the money later?" Su Chan also laughed and said coquettishly, "You still say that I'm a miser? You are a big miser." Li Yundong pretended to be angry and glared at Su Chan. "If I wasn't a miser, how could I afford to raise you?" They chatted and laughed. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, someone came over to inform them to go to the venue to collect the bonus. Li Yundong and the others were all overjoyed, and all of them were beaming with joy. Su Chan was smiling so much that her eyebrows and eyes were almost squeezed together. Even Zi Yuan was smiling. But when Li Yundong and the others arrived at the venue, they didn't see Zhang Yuming and the others. Instead, a hot female secretary appeared and handed them a check with a smile. Li Yundong took the check and saw that there was only 800,000 on it. He immediately raised his head and asked in confusion, "Why only 800,000? Shouldn't it be 2 million?" The female secretary said, "Yes, 2 million is before tax. After tax it should actually be 1.6 million. At present, Mr. Zhang is a little short on cash, so he only has 800,000 funds. As for the other part of the funds, Mr. Zhang means to use the goods on hand to replace it." "Goods?" Li Yundong was surprised and said with a strange expression, "What goods? Why does it look like a mafia transaction? Can other goods be used to pay off the debt?" The female secretary said, "There's nothing we can do. All the money that Chief Zhang can take out is here. This was the original plan. We didn't expect that an individual representative would win first place. The other large tea companies can also sell our goods quickly and exchange them for cash, so the other companies know about this. It's just that you guys." Only then did Li Yundong understand. Oh my God, there were unspoken rules before the competition, and after winning first place, there was still unspoken rules. F***CK, this works too? Li Yundong was going crazy. He couldn't help but ask angrily, "Where can we buy so many tea leaves?" The female secretary, "There's no other way. This is the current situation. You can also choose to give up these tea leaves, but we will regard it as you automatically giving up the reward. Watch net." Guan Hongling said angrily, "This is fraud." Li Yundong suppressed his anger and said, "Aren't you afraid that we'll sue you?" The female secretary pretended to be pitiful. "We didn't want this either. The company didn't expect such a situation to happen. However, everyone knows this in their hearts. Who could have predicted that you would win the championship?" Li Yundong said angrily, "So you're blaming us?" Seeing his anger, the secretary took a step back in fright and quickly waved her hand. "I didn't mean that." Zhou Qin, who was standing to one side, suddenly said, "What are you going to replace it with?" Hearing her speak, The secretary felt as if she had been pardoned. She quickly said, "Of course, the best Tiguanyin tea." Xueqi thought for a moment and said to Li Yundong in a low voice, "Zhang Yuming was able to get out of Lu Miaomiao's case, so he must have some official background. It's useless for us to sue them. It's better to take these things and think of another way." Li Yundong also asked in a low voice, "Do you have any ideas?" Xueqi said in a low voice, "There is a way." Li Yundong nodded and said decisively, "Well, I believe you. Let's do it this way." He said to the female secretary, "Okay, I promise you, but you have to write a contract. Otherwise, what if you deny it when the time comes?" The female secretary said, "Of course. Even if you didn't say it, we would have signed a contract with you." As she said this, she waved to a staff member not far away and handed over 2 contracts. Li Yundong took them and handed them to Xueqi without looking at them. Xueqi carefully looked through the 2 contracts, then handed them back to Li Yundong and nodded. Li Yundong began to sign his name on the contract, but when he filled in the place of delivery, he was worried again. He couldn't help looking at Xueqi and asking, "Where should I fill in this place?" Xueqi thought for a moment, then said to the female secretary, "Can you send goods from another place?" The female secretary looked hesitant. "Another place? Where?" Xueqi said, "Dongwu City." When the female secretary heard this, she quickly shook her head like a rattle. No, it's too far." Xueqi didn't stand on ceremony and said, "Do you want us to drag so many tea leaves back? We all know how unscrupulous you are in this matter. Since we have chosen to make concessions, shouldn't you also make concessions appropriately? Otherwise, we might as well break up. If we expose this matter, no one will end up well." The female secretary saw that Xueqi was like a lady from a noble family, and her words were even sharper. She didn't dare to neglect them and quickly said with a smile, "I'll go and ask Mr. Zhang." She walked to the side and made a phone call to ask in a low voice. Then she came over and said with a smile, "Mr. Zhang said it's okay. If it's a different place, then it's a different place. The goods will be delivered tomorrow, but we are only responsible for delivering the goods. After arriving at the destination, we are not responsible for moving the goods." Xueqi immediately said, "Okay, that's it." Seeing that the 2 of them had reached an agreement, Li Yundong also readily signed the contract. After the group of people came out of the venue, they looked at each other with different expressions. Su Chan looked resentful. 2 million yuan has suddenly become 800,000 yuan. "I hate it." Ruan Hongling also let out a long sigh. Alas, the assets have shrunk too fast. Even inflation can't be so fast. Zi Yuan smiled and said, "Money is just a worldly possession. We cultivators shouldn't care so much about gains and losses." Li Yundong also smiled and said, "At least 800,000 yuan is out of thin air. 800,000 yuan is not a small amount. Don't be greedy." Seeing that Li Yundong didn't look worried, Su Chan asked curiously, "Yundong, weren't you very angry just now? Why are you so happy now?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Xueqi said that she has a way, so I believe that she has a way, right?" As he said this, he winked at Xueqi. Xueqi smiled confidently and said, "Well, there is a way." Li Yundong, Ruan Hongling, and Su Chan couldn't help but ask curiously, "What is it?" Xueqi said, "Didn't I say before that there are a few storefronts for rent in the commercial street of Dongwu City? We can buy that storefront and make it a high-end tea house. There is a lot of traffic nearby, and most of them are high-end consumer places. There are many white-collar workers going in and out. If we make an elegant and comfortable tea bar, there should be business. In addition, Zhenren Zi Yuan won first place in this year's tea culture competition. There will definitely be no problem promoting this living advertisement." Li Yundong was a rare genius in cultivation, but when it came to business, he was far inferior. Seeing that Xueqi had thought things through clearly, he couldn't help but be overjoyed and said, Well, I picked up this disciple for free. I'm very happy. I've decided to hold a banquet. Let's go and have a big meal." As soon as he mentioned food, Ruan Hongling laughed and said, Okay, where are we going to eat?" Li Yundong waved his hand and laughed. "Let's go back to the Taoist temple and eat vegetarian noodles." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone else laughed. Only Su Chan was a little sad and unhappy. The group of people returned to the Taoist temple of Mount Tianlong. After dinner, everyone went back to their rooms. Li Yundong went to Su Chan's room alone. Before he entered the room, he saw the little girl sitting alone on a stone bench in the courtyard of the courtyard, holding her head with her arms. She was alone. Li Yundong smiled and walked over quietly. Then, he suddenly put his arms around the girl's waist and threatened her with a ha. Girl, I want to rob you. Su Chan was startled, but when she heard Li Yundong's voice, she relaxed. She turned around and smiled. Sir, why are you here? Li Yundong pinched the girl's nose with a doting expression. I'm here to see my girl. The girl giggled and said, oh, and then didn't say anything else. Li Yundong saw that there was a hint of worry between her brows, and she was not as carefree as usual. His heart skipped a beat and he asked, Girl, what's wrong with you? Li Yundong's soft question aroused Su Chan's worries. She raised her head, and her charming face was full of worry. Sir, do you not like me anymore? Li Yundong was shocked by the little girl's words. He held her in his arms lovingly and asked softly, You fool, why did you say that? Chapter 316. Go to watch net. Su Chan's eyes flashed as she looked up at him. Her red lips opened slightly, as if she had a lot of things on her mind to say, but she swallowed them back down. Watch net. 7K. Oath M. Li Yundong gently pinched the tip of the little girl's round nose and said with a smile, What's wrong? If you have something to say, just say it. We've been together for a long time. What can't we say? Su Chan was moved by his gentleness. She summoned up her courage and said, Yundong, do you think I'm useless? Li Yundong asked curiously, Why do you say that? Su Chan said in a daze, Sister Zi Yuan is very powerful. Not only does she know how to do all kinds of housework, but she is also proficient in the art of tea. Without her this time, we couldn't think of a way to get money. Zhou Qin can also help you manage your business and give you advice, but I don't know anything. As the little girl spoke, her eyes were filled with tears of grievance and sadness. Li Yundong felt pity for her. He held the little girl in his arms and said softly, You are really a silly girl. Of course you can do something. The little girl asked with tears in her eyes, What can I do? Li Yundong smiled and said, You will only cause me trouble. Su Chan burst into laughter, but soon she pursed her lips and more tears welled up in her eyes. She choked and said, Since you've said that, I'm really useless. Li Yundong chuckled and hugged her like he was coaxing a child. I'm just kidding. You know a lot of things. Su Chan wiped away her tears. Tell me about it. Li Yundong grabbed the little girl's snow-white hand and pinched it one finger at a time. Look, first of all, you know how to cultivate. Didn't you teach me how to cultivate? You're the one who introduced me to the school. You're my teacher. Just this alone is already very impressive. The little girl looked at him without blinking. When she heard him talking about the past, she felt warm in her heart and was slightly happy. You were so stupid back then, even more stupid than me. You didn't know anything, and I was exhausted from teaching you. Watch net. Li Yundong nodded hurriedly. Yes. I'm the stupidest. If it weren't for you, I might have died of stupidity. Li Yundong suddenly laughed. Do you know how pigs die? Su Chan recalled the joke she had told Li Yundong the first time they had eaten at McDonald's. She immediately giggled and said, I died of stupidity. Li Yundong chuckled and said, Yes, you finally know? You see, I'm so stupid, but you still managed to teach me. Don't you feel a sense of accomplishment? Su Chan was delighted at first, but then she pouted and said unhappily, You're so stupid, but you're already so powerful. I'm still at the same place. Isn't that even stupider than you? You lied to me just now. Li Yundong hurriedly coaxed, That's not right. It's precisely because I'm stupid that the clumsy bird has to fly first. You're a dignified fox immortal. Naturally, you'll catch up with me after a short nap. Su Chan knew that Li Yundong was saying this to coax her. She also knew that with Li Yundong's aptitude, as long as he continued to cultivate, she would never be able to catch up with him in this life. Fortunately, Su Chan felt that her becoming stronger was far less than Li Yundong's, which made her even happier. However, Li Yundong's cultivation had suddenly surpassed her, and she couldn't help him in the past. It was as if she had become a dispensable person. Su Chan felt lost and sad. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong eagerly and said, "Well, you don't have to coax me. I know all about it. I can't do housework, I can't cook, I can't do anything. The only thing I can do is cultivate. Now that you've surpassed me, I'm useless to you." Li Yundong pretended to be angry and glared at Su Chan, shouting in a low voice, "Nonsense. Why are you useless to me?" Su Chan pouted and tugged at the corner of her clothes with her fingers. "What can I do? When other cultivators see you with me, they all say that you've abandoned yourself. I'm so sad to hear that." Li Yundong laughed and said, "What others say has nothing to do with us. My family's little girl is very capable. They are envious, jealous, and hateful." Su Chan raised her head. "What can I do?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "When we open a shop in the future, I can be the boss, and you can be the proprietress. Now I am the leader of the Fox Zen School. In the future, you can be the wife of the leader of the Fox Zen School. In the future, I will accept many disciples, and you can also be my wife." Li Yundong smiled as he described the future. "Think about it. In the future, when we open a store, if business is good, we can open a second one. If we open a second one, there will be a third and a fourth one. Wow, when we open a chain store, you will be the big boss. You will have millions of men under your command, and everyone will respond to you with a single call. When people see you, they will respectfully call you boss." "Wow, how impressive." Su Chan giggled and pressed her cheek against his broad and strong chest. She stared at him with sparkling eyes, listening to him with infatuation. "Watch net." Li Yundong waved his hand and continued, "Why, don't you think it's impressive enough? Well, in the future I will accept a large number of disciples, and then the disciples will accept more disciples, and then the disciples of the disciples will accept more disciples. At that time, they will spread their branches and leaves. Wow, there will be disciples all over the country. When they see you, they will call you Master's wife, Grandmaster's wife, and, well, Master's wife. What should you call her?" Su Chan's cheeks were slightly red. She hid her face in Li Yundong's arms, revealing only one eye that was smiling like a crescent moon. She giggled and said, "I don't know." Li Yundong thought for a moment and simply said, "Then call me Empress Dowager. Wow, look at how impressive you are. When you go out, there will be disciples and grandchildren leading the way in front of you, and there will be disciples serving you carefully shouting, 'Empress Dowager is getting on the sedan chair. Teske, Teske.' When the time comes, even the real Empress Dowager will not be as impressive as you." Su Chan giggled and said angrily, "You're so annoying. You're the Empress Dowager." "No, you're the Empress Dowager's Xiao Li." Li Yundong was stunned. "Oh my god. It's really appropriate. Isn't my surname Li?" Seeing Li Yundong's dull look, Su Chan was amused. She deliberately put on a straight face, coughed, and said in a crisp voice, "Xiao Li, I'm going to get on the sedan chair." Li Yundong laughed and said, "Silly, who said that they were going to get on the sedan chair? That's what others say." Su Chan had obviously gotten into her role. She put her hands on her hips and said angrily, "Are you the Empress Dowager or am I?" Seeing that the little girl was rarely happy, Li Yundong played with her. He put on a careful face and said with a flattering smile, "You are, of course you are the Empress Dowager." As he said this, he flapped his sleeves and mimicked the eunuchs in the Qing dynasty plays, saying in a shrill voice, "The Empress Dowager is getting on the sedan chair." Su Chan giggled uncontrollably. Seeing that Su Chan wasn't moving, Li Yundong asked curiously, "Why isn't the Empress Dowager moving?" Su Chan deliberately put on a straight face and said pretentiously, "Moving? Where is the sedan chair?" Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. He quickly squatted down slightly in front of the little girl, turned his head and smiled at her. "I'm coming. Xiao Li will carry you back to the Palace of Compassionate Peace." Su Chan burst into laughter. She jumped onto Li Yundong's back with a smile, wrapped her hands around his neck, and whispered in his ear, "Master, you're so kind to me." Seeing that the little girl had stopped acting, Li Yundong chuckled and said, "Of course. If I'm not good to you, who should I be good to?" Su Chan giggled. She rested her head on Li Yundong's shoulder and greedily sniffed the strong masculine scent on his body. The little girl thought of all the things Li Yundong had done for her and suddenly became a little infatuated. Her eyes were a little moist and she murmured, "Did I do something good in my last life that made me meet you?" Li Yundong knew that she was talking nonsense, so he chuckled and said, "Wrong. I broke 300 wooden fish in my last life before I met you." Hearing this, Su Chan was immediately amused. "That's what I said to my master last time." But when it came to her master, her face suddenly became gloomy again. Su Chan said in a low voice, "I don't know how my master is now. I'm living a happy life here, but I don't know where she is suffering." When Li Yundong heard the little girl mention Ao Wushuang, his heart also became heavy for a moment. He couldn't help but sigh and say, "Speaking of this matter, it's really complicated and I don't know where to start. The world is so big. Where can I find Yan Feng? Even Zi Yuan doesn't know her whereabouts. This woman has endured in the Fox Zen school for 9 years. I really can't imagine how long she will endure this time." Hearing this, Su Chan became even more silent and frowned. After a long time, she sighed softly and said, "I'm so worried about my master. When I think of this, I feel like I can't breathe. It's so uncomfortable." Li Yundong gently stroked the little girl's head and said, "How about this? I'll ask around. Logically speaking, I am now the leader of the Fox Zen school, and Ao Wushuang is also a senior of the Fox Zen school. Whether it's reasonable or personal, I should rescue her as soon as possible." Su Chan sighed softly and said, "It would be great if someone had cultivated karmic connection." Li Yundong was stunned and said, "Karmic connection? Karmic connection, one of the 5 great Shentong of Buddhism?" As Li Yundong spoke, he suddenly slapped his thigh and said loudly, "Yes, why didn't I think of it?" As he slapped his thigh, Su Chan, who was behind him, suddenly cried out. She covered her leg and complained loudly, "Why did you slap my leg?" Li Yundong hunched Su Chan on his back and said with a smile, Sorry. It's a little inconvenient to slap my own leg in this position, so I had to slap your leg." Su Chan said angrily, "How is it inconvenient? You obviously did it on purpose." She suddenly thought of something and asked, "Do you know about karmic connection?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Of course I know. According to the Surangama Sutra, there are 5 great Shentong of Buddhism, namely the heavenly eye, the heavenly ear, the heavenly mind, the divine foot, the karmic connection, and the karmic connection. Karmic connection means that one can see through the past karma of all living beings and see the unknown and future." Su Chan looked at Li Yundong and couldn't help sighing. "In the past, you didn't know anything. Now I didn't expect you to be so knowledgeable." Li Yundong chuckled and said, "I know a person who can use karmic connection. Maybe he can help you find your master's whereabouts." Su Chan couldn't help being overjoyed and quickly asked, "Who?" Chapter 317. Go to watch net. Su Chan asked ecstatically, but Li Yundong was not in a hurry to answer. Instead he said, "I thought you had been taken away by the monks of Shiyuan Temple, so I rushed to save you, but I didn't expect to let 2 golden snakes go. Do you still remember this? Go to watch net. 7K. Oath M." Su Chan blinked her eyes and didn't understand why Li Yundong would say that. She said, "I remember, but does this have anything to do with destiny?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Of course it has something to do with it. I remember that the abbot of Shiyuan Temple once said that he had a disciple who could predict the future. I didn't pay attention at that time, but now that you mentioned it, I remember. Isn't the disciple of the abbot of Shiyuan Temple practicing karmic connection?" Su Chan was overjoyed. "Then let's go find him now, shall we?" Li Yundong patted the little girl on the forehead and said with a smile, "Look at how anxious you are. It's so late. Doesn't the monk need to rest? Have a good rest tonight. We'll rush over early tomorrow morning." Su Chan beamed with joy and nodded vigorously. Li Yundong carried the little girl into the room and put her on the bed. He knew that Su Chan was worried about Ao Wushuang, so he didn't joke with her too much. He just covered her with a thin quilt and said softly, "Don't worry, your master is just sealed. Although Yan Feng hates her to the core, she is now a young spirit body and can't use magical items. She can't do anything to your master." Su Chan got under the quilt and watched Li Yundong tuck the quilt for her. When Li Yundong was about to turn around and leave, she suddenly called out in a low voice, "Master." Li Yundong turned his head and smiled. Girl, what's wrong? Su Chan rolled her eyes, suddenly got up, hugged Li Yundong, and kissed him hard on the cheek. Then she quickly let go and got under the quilt with a smile, only revealing a pair of extremely beautiful and intelligent eyes. She said with a sweet smile, "It's so good to have you here." Li Yundong chuckled. "You fool." With that, he walked out of the room. At dawn the next day, after everyone had woken up, Li Yundong saw that Zi Yuan, Ruan Hongling, Zhou Qin, and Su Chan had all come to his room, so he told them what he and Su Chan had discussed last night. After that, he said, "I thought about it all night and felt that the matter of Ao Wushuang couldn't be delayed, lest a long night brings trouble. But today is the day Zhang Yuming and the others deliver the goods. It's not good for there to be no one in Dongwu City. I think it's better for us to split up." Zi Yuan also nodded and said to Li Yunyang, "Hongling and I will go back to Dongwu City. Why don't you and Su Chan stay here to inquire about Ao Wushuang's whereabouts? Watch net." Li Yundong nodded and said, "I think so too." Then he turned his head and looked at Zhou Qin. "What about you? Do you want to stay here with me or go back to Dongwu City?" Zhou Qin smiled slightly and said, "Of course I will follow master." Li Yundong chuckled and didn't object. He immediately made a decision. "Then it's settled. After breakfast, we'll split up." There was nothing delicious in the Taoist temple where the Fox Zen school was located. It was nothing more than vegetarian noodles, but Li Yundong and the others were not gluttons, so they had a good breakfast. After breakfast, Zi Yuan flew back to Dongwu City with Ruan Hongling, while Li Yundong took the little girl and Zhou Qin to Shiyuan Temple in Dongwu City by car. The three of them took a taxi to Shiyuan Temple. This time, Li Yundong didn't choose to force his way in. Instead, he reported his name to a monk at the door and then waited respectfully at the door. While waiting, Li Yundong suddenly said to Su Chan, "I'm really ashamed. Last time I broke in recklessly, the abbot not only didn't blame me, but also told me where you were, but I still don't know what his name is." Su Chan giggled and said, "It's a matter of self-interest. Although Shiyuan Temple is not as good as the temples of the four famous Buddhist mountains, it is still a little famous. I know the Buddhist name of the abbot." Li Yundong was delighted. He put his palms together and said, "Amitba, this is a matter of boundless merit. It's better than making a fool of yourself later." Su Chan smiled and said, "The abbot here is called Master Purin. I heard that his magical power is quite amazing." Li Yundong smiled and said, "That's right. I almost suffered a big loss in Shiyuan Temple before." The two of them were talking in low voices. Not long after, a greeting monk came over and respectfully asked Li Yundong to go with him. Li Yundong put his palms together and returned the greeting, then asked the greeting monk to lead the way. He followed a few steps behind. Along the way, Li Yundong saw Zhou Qin looking around the temple curiously, especially when they walked to the Merit Forest, which was full of all kinds of talismans and prayer sachets. Li Yundong whispered to Su Chan and Zhou Qin about the situation where he had fought with a middle-aged monk here. He was very eloquent, and in a few words, he described the fierce fighting vividly, which made Su Chan and Zhou Qin's eyes widen. Li Yundong pointed to the talismans and sachets hanging in the surrounding woods and said in a low voice, "The talismans here have absorbed the thoughts of many people and can be turned into powerful mental power to help the monks here increase their cultivation magical power. Go to the net." 7K. O.M. Su Chan, who was listening attentively, suddenly said, "Yundong, why don't you follow them and carry some talismans with magical power with you?" Li Yundong chuckled and said, "Didn't I use the Five Thunders Righteous Talisman you gave me last time? Besides, talismans are the Shentong magic of the Jinshan sect and other northern sections. My cultivation is mainly based on the Niden sect. If I want to learn talisman magic, I don't know where to learn it." Su Chan blinked and said, "If you have the immortal pen, you can draw any talisman you want." Li Yundong laughed and said, "Didn't you hear what Zi Yuan said? This is the magical item of the great grandmasters Wasi of the Danding sect. It has disappeared for more than 1,000 years. How could it still be in the world?" Su Chan pouted and snorted. "I hope all the good magical items in the world are ours." Li Yundong laughed and tapped her nose. "Little girl, you should be content." Zhou Qin looked around at the talismans and brocade pouches hanging on the Merit Forest and sighed. "When I came to the temple before, I saw people burning incense and worshipping Buddha, and some people hanging these talismans to pray for blessings. I laughed at them for being superstitious, but now it seems that I was ignorant. Li Yundong chuckled and said meaningfully, God is fair to people. He closed the door of the previous world for you, but opened the door of the cultivation world for you. Xueqi was stunned when she heard this. Thinking about the profound meaning of Li Yundong's words, she didn't feel a little silly. When Li Yundong and the others passed through the Merit Forest, a middle-aged monk was waiting at the exit. Li Yundong looked over and saw that it was the middle-aged monk who had fought with him last time. He hurried forward, put his palms together, and said respectfully, Master, we meet again. I offended you last time, but you haven't apologized. I'm really sorry. The middle-aged monk smiled slightly and returned the salute. Zhenren Li, you're too polite. As the saying goes, no fight, no deal. Without the last fight, how would I have known that Zhenren Li could repel the joint attack of the 6 great sects? Your reputation is well-deserved. Li Yundong laughed and said, I'm ashamed. I haven't asked for your name, Master. The middle-aged monk smiled and said, I'm Feikong. Zhenren Li, please come in. The abbot is waiting for you. As he spoke, he glanced at Zhou Qin and Su Chan. When his eyes swept over Su Chan, Feikong frowned slightly, but soon relaxed. He thought to himself, this fox spirit is really beautiful. I have cultivated for more than 40 years, but at first glance, my foundation was almost shaken. The danger of beauty is really powerful. But when his eyes fell on Zhou Qin, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He couldn't help thinking to himself, this woman is obviously a virgin, but why does she have Yuanyang Zhenqi in her body? It's extremely rare for a mysterious Yin body to have such Yuanyang Qi. Could this woman be a cultivation genius that has not been seen in 100 years? It was easy for a man to cultivate, but difficult for a woman to cultivate. This was a well-known truth in the cultivation world, but once a woman succeeded in cultivation, she would be a great master. Feikong looked Zhou Qin up and down and sighed in his heart. He couldn't help but say, Benefactress, may I ask if you have a master? Zhou Qin came from a noble family and behaved very politely. She smiled slightly and said yes. Feikong was disappointed. Who is it? Zhou Qin smiled and said, he's far away, but close at hand. Only then did Feikong understand. He put his palms together and said enviously, Zhenren Li, you are so lucky to have such a good disciple. I'm very envious. Li Yundong laughed and said, monks pay attention to the emptiness of worldly desires. Aren't you tempted by the mundane? Feikong retorted, otherwise, the way of cultivation focuses on one's own cultivation, and secondly on the teaching of disciples. If Hongren, the 5th patriarch of Buddhism, hadn't found a good disciple like Huaining, how could we have the glory of the 6th patriarch's Huaining Zen sect unifying the world in the future? Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. Yes, this monk is right. I can't do everything myself in the future, can I? It's okay now. If I become famous in the future, people will come to challenge me all day long. Won't I die of exhaustion? Li Yundong understood and decided to teach Zhou Qin cultivation when he went back. He put his palms together and said gratefully, Master, you're right. I've learned a lot. Feikong smiled and returned the salute. You're welcome, Zhenren Li. The two of them talked along the way, and it didn't take long for them to arrive at the Zen room of the abbot. Feikong glanced at Su Chan and Zhou Qin and said, Benefactors, would you like to follow me to the room next door to have a rest for a while? As a demon, Su Chan was naturally afraid of such an important place of Buddhism. How could she be willing to leave Li Yundong's side? She grabbed the corner of Li Yundong's clothes tightly with both hands and refused to let go. She looked at him eagerly, for fear that he would nod and agree. Zhou Qin was good at observing people's expressions, so she said, Does this Buddhist land also value men more than women? Hearing this, Feikong was stunned and didn't know how to answer for a moment. Just as he was feeling embarrassed, he heard the voice of an old man in the Zen room laughing and saying, Amitabha, Buddha once said that all living beings in the world are equal. How can there be such a thing as valuing men over women? Feikong, go ahead and let them in. Only then did Feikong put his palms together and turn to leave. After Li Yundong watched Feikong leave, he took Su Chan and Zhou Qin into the Zen room. As soon as he entered the room, he saw Purin sitting on the bed, holding a string of Buddha beads in one hand and smiling at him. "We meet again, Zhenren Li," Purin said with a smile. Li Yundong bowed respectfully and said, "Yes, greetings, Master Purin." Purin glanced at Su Chan and Zhou Qin faintly, his expression unchanged. He looked at Li Yundong and said, "Zhenren Li, you must have come here for something. If you have something to say, you might as well say it." Seeing that Purin was so straightforward, Li Yundong didn't beat around the bush and simply told him what had happened. Finally he said, "As the leader of the Fox Zen School, I know that the cultivators of other sects in the cultivation world think that I have given up on myself, but how can they know my determination to reorganize the Fox Zen School? Now that the seniors of our Fox Zen School have disappeared, I thought about it and had no choice but to ask you for help. If you don't help me, I'm afraid I'll be at a loss." Purin nodded slightly and chuckled. After thinking for a while, he said, "Since you are determined to manage the Fox Zen School into a famous and decent sect, this is a matter of boundless merit and virtue. Buddha will be very happy to know about it." Back then, the founder of the Fox Zen School, Pan Shi, had some connections with our Buddhism. However, later, the mystical silver fox got in the way, so we turned friends into enemies. Now that the Fox Zen School has fallen into the hands of Zhenren Li, it seems that there is hope for it to be revived. Naturally, I should help Zhenren Li with such a good thing. As he said this, he picked up a copper bell beside him and shook it gently. After a while, a young monk came in from the door and saluted respectfully. "Master, what can I do for you?" Purin smiled and said, "Fanning, take them to my disappointing disciple." Fanning was shocked and looked embarrassed. "Master, you want me to go? This is not good, is it?" Purin said in a deep voice. "Buddha said, if I don't go to hell, who will? How can I be picky about this kind of thing?" Fanning's face suddenly became bitter and he thought to himself, "Yes, you said yourself that you won't go to hell. Who will go to hell? Why don't you go to hell yourself? Why me?" But he didn't dare to say such words, nor did he dare to go against Purin's will. He bowed and said to Li Yundong reluctantly, "Please come with me." Li Yundong followed him curiously and thought to himself, "Where is Purin's disciple who can use the karmic connection? Why does he say that if I don't go to hell, who will? Why is it so scary?" Chapter 318. Go to watch net. Purin, the abbot of Shiyuan Temple, watched Li Yunyang and the others leave. After a while, Feikong came in, put his palms together, and asked, "Master, why are you helping him? This person has had a conflict with our Shiyuan Temple before, and the disciples have a lot of criticism in private. Moreover, his reputation in the cultivation world is extremely bad. If we deal with him, will it?" Purin didn't wait for him to finish speaking. He looked up at the middle-aged monk and said leisurely, "Feikong, when you became my disciple, I named you Feikong. The original intention was to let you understand the meaning of the four elements being empty. Go to watch net. 7K. Oath M. The cultivation of the young disciples is still shallow, and the world is so complicated and tempting. I can understand that they can't understand, but you've been with me for dozens of years, and you still haven't understood this point. You shouldn't. Feikong looked ashamed and bowed. "Master, please teach me." Purin stood up and said, "The four elements of Buddha are empty. The sky is empty, the earth is empty, the mountains and the oceans are empty, and even your physical body and divine sense are empty. But only the great way of Buddha is real. I don't care what others think of us, but I have to consider how our Dharma will be passed on in the future and how it will be carried forward. Zhenren Li, I observed his behavior and saw that he is a righteous person who abhors evil. I observed his words and saw that he is a down-to-earth person who does not boast. Finally, I observed his appearance and saw that he is surrounded by beautiful women, but he is still a boy with Yuan-yang body, and the women around him are also virgins with Yuan-yin body. It can be seen that he is a cultivator with great determination and is not greedy for beauty. A person with great determination and great ambition will definitely be able to achieve great things in the future. Regardless of his talent, based on these 2 points, I can conclude that he will be a great cultivator in the future, and his achievements will not be inferior to the leaders of the contemporary sections." As Purin spoke, he walked to the window, opened the wooden window, pointed to the big tree in the garden, and said, "However, it is not enough for a person to have great determination and great ambition. Look at this tree. Even if it can grow into a towering tree, it may still grow crooked. Trees are like this and so are people. If a person harbors evil intentions, then his determination and ambition will become a sin for him to commit evil in the future. Once such a person commits evil, it will be 100 times worse than an ordinary person. Purin turned around and continued. So, I carefully observed his face again. I saw him look straight at me twice. His eyes were clear and bright, without the slightest evil thoughts or crooked thoughts, and his eyebrows were even more awe-inspiring. Therefore, I believe that this person will definitely be a great cultivator in our righteous way in the future. Purin glanced at Feikong and sighed. Feikong, you're not the head abbot, so you don't understand my difficulties. Although our Shiyuan temple is quite famous in Dongwu City, it is far inferior to the 4 famous temples. Moreover, the Taoists in Dongwu City are very powerful, and the forces of Zhengyi school and the 6 great sects are spreading here. In the near future, they will hold the Taoist assembly here, which is held every 4 years in the cultivation world. If our Shiyuan temple does not make some strong external help, not only will we not be able to cope with the erosion of these sects, but I'm afraid that we will also be unable to support the great calamity of the cultivation world in the future. Feikong looked puzzled and asked, Master, why don't we ask for help from other Buddhist sects? Purin shook his head. Since ancient times, there has been no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. The same is true of our Buddhist sections. Go to the net. 7K. Oath M. Today, Shiyuan Temple has asked for help from other Buddhist sections. In the future, even if you win against them, they will gossip. Let me tell you something. There was a woman who needed help from Guanyin, so she devoutly recited the name of Guanyin Bodhisattva in front of the statue of Guanyin every day. Every day, she recited it thousands or even tens of thousands of times. But one day, her son suddenly asked her, You pray to Guanyin Bodhisattva every day, but if something happens to Guanyin Bodhisattva, who will she turn to? As he spoke, Purin looked at Feikong with a smile. Feikong, if you were Guanyin Bodhisattva, who would you turn to? Feikong suddenly understood. He put his palms together and said, It's better to ask for help than to ask for help from others. Purin put his palms together and said with a smile, That's right. Instead of humbly begging other Buddhist peers, it's better for us to find some strong help ourselves. Zhenren Li is now in the stage where he has just emerged. I dare say that he will definitely be a hero in the future and will be an earth-shattering figure. If we don't make friends with him now, when will we? Feikong showed a look of admiration. Master, you are far-sighted. I am far inferior to you. But after he finished speaking, he thought of something and couldn't help but show a strange expression. He said, But Master, aren't you afraid that your disciple will cause you trouble again? When Purin heard this, he couldn't help but look a little embarrassed. He was stunned for a while and suddenly smiled bitterly. Amitba. Then I can only let Zhenren Li pray for himself. At this time, Li Yundong was walking out of the temple with a young disciple of Purin. He talked to the monk named Fanning and said, Master, where are we going? Zhou Qin and Su Chan could be said to be a stunning beauty in the world, while Su Chan was a beautiful fox spirit. No matter which one of them, they would give a great impact to men, especially young monks who did not have enough cultivation. Fanning didn't look sideways along the way and didn't dare to look at Su Chan and Zhou Qin at all. He looked down, as if he wanted to seal all his 7 apertures divine senses. At this time when he saw Li Yundong talking to him, he had no choice but to quickly return the salute and say, I don't deserve to be called a master. You can just call me Fanning. I don't know where he's going, but this senior martial brother of mine is very unruly and his whereabouts are always uncertain. I think it will take a lot of effort to find him. Li Yundong asked in confusion. I see that your abbot is using his cell phone. Doesn't he have a cell phone to contact him? Fanning smiled bitterly and said, Whatever valuable things my senior brother has on him, he will pawn them as soon as possible. Li Yundong was taken aback. Could it be that your Xixiang is a gambling addict? Fanning shook his head and said, No, my senior brother doesn't like to gamble. Li Yundong's face was filled with confusion. What's the reason? Fanning said with a strange expression. You'll know when you get there. Watch net. 7K. Oath M. They got in the taxi. Fanning sat in front of the car and said to the driver, Master, go to Mudu Hong Kong Street. When Li Yundong heard the name of the place, he was shocked. He thought he had heard wrong, so he quickly asked, "Where are we going?" Fanning coughed dryly. "Mudu Hong Kong Street." Li Yundong stammered, Isn't this the red light district?" Fanning's expression became more and more strange. "Yes." Li Yundong was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. Your senior martial brother is in such a place?" Fanning looked ashamed. "Yes." Li Yundong's eyes widened, and he suddenly had a bad feeling. Xueqi, who was beside him, also had a strange look on her face and was also speechless. Su Chan comforted him and said, "Yundong, not all the people there are debauchery. It's possible that this master is there, well there." Towards the end, she couldn't go on. What was a monk doing in the red light district? Su Chan said with a dry smile. "Maybe he is cultivating in the secular world." Hearing this, Li Yundong quickly nodded as if to comfort himself. "Well, it's possible. A master is naturally a bit maverick." It was in the morning, and there was no traffic on the road. After about 20 minutes, they arrived at Mudu Hong Kong Street. At this time in the morning, most of the entertainment places here were closed. The streets were very deserted, in sharp contrast to the bright lights of the last time Li Yundong had been here. Fanning took Li Yundong around for a while, then said with a wry smile, "It's not time yet. I can't find him yet." Li Yundong asked in confusion, "When can we find him?" Fanning said with a strange expression, "Probably after 4 or 5 in the afternoon." Li Yundong asked curiously, "Why at this time?" Xueqi couldn't bear to listen anymore. She pulled Li Yundong aside and said with a slightly red face, 4 or 5 in the afternoon is the time when the entertainment city opens." Li Yundong asked why? Why does it open at this time? As a girl, Xueqi had to explain this kind of thing to a boy, which was really a little embarrassing. She coughed dryly and said very unnaturally, "Because this is the time when most men get off work. Even if they are asked by their wives at home, they can say that they are working overtime. At this time, their families will not be suspicious, so many men choose this time to come." "Ahem, you know." Li Yundong suddenly understood. He said in a strange tone, "I don't know, but you know very well." Xueqi blushed and said angrily, "I'm explaining it to you, aren't I? You're so annoying. I won't tell you next time." Li Yundong quickly smiled apologetically and said, "Don't mind me. I just said it casually. Don't think too much." As he said this, he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Fanning with a strange expression. "Master Fanning, you also know very well." Fanning's face was full of embarrassment and shame. He was originally from the south of the Yangtze River, and he was fair and clean. This time, his face was as red as a cooked prawn. He stammered, "I also heard it from my senior brother." Li Yundong took a deep breath and couldn't help sighing. "Your senior brother is really a weirdo in the monk world. I just don't know his name." Fanning put his palms together and said, "My senior brother's original name is Ding Zonglei, and his Buddhist name is Wu Hua." Li Yundong asked curiously, "Since your senior brother is a disciple of Master Purin, shouldn't he also be in the Dharma generation?" Fanning smiled bitterly and said, "In theory that's the case, but my senior brother disliked the name given by Master Purin, so he changed it to Wu Hua himself. He took it from the meaning of Tang Bohu's poem, 'No flowers, no wine, no hose, no fields.'" Li Yundong also smiled bitterly and said, "This is the first time I've heard of such a maverick monk in this world." Xueqi, who was standing to one side, saw that there was a hint of worry between Li Yundong's brows. It was obvious that he was worried that this monk was just a nominal monk. She comforted him and said, "You don't have to worry. Maybe this master is a first-class figure in Jidian." Hearing this, Li Yundong was relieved. He nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, what you said makes sense. I was overthinking it." Fanning said, "It's too early to come now. Why don't we come again in the evening? My senior brother has always been elusive. We can only find him here in the evening." Li Yundong said helplessly, "Well, that's the only way." They waited until 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when Li Yundong and the others came to the streets of Hong Kong again. At this time, they saw that all the entertainment venues had opened their doors and were decorated with lanterns and streamers. Most of the sexy and beautiful women were standing at the door, greeting the guests respectfully. At this time, The traffic flow on the street had obviously increased, and well-dressed men were constantly coming and going. Li Yundong looked at the many entertainment venues on the street and said with a wry smile, "There are so many shops here. How can we find him?" Fanning also said with a wry smile, "There's no way. Let's go door to door." Li Yundong was depressed. He had never dreamed that he would return to this red light street and have to go door to look for someone. Xueqi and Su Chan looked at each other with strange expressions on their faces. The two girls followed behind Li Yundong with a straight face, pretending to look straight ahead. Li Yundong and the others went door to door. After searching about 10 shops, Li Yundong felt a headache coming on because of the strong smell of cosmetics on the girls here. He couldn't help asking, "There are at least dozens of shops here. How long will it take to find him?" Fanning said helplessly, "There's no way, so when my master asked me to come, I didn't want to." Li Yundong opened his mouth and was about to speak, but suddenly there was a noise coming from a shop not far away. He turned his head and saw that the shop was extraordinary. It was built like a hotel, and there were a few golden words on it. Crystal Love International Entertainment City. Wow, this shop is very familiar. Li Yundong took a closer look and saw a few security guards coming out. The security guards were holding a man, and behind them was a coquettish woman. Li Yundong looked again and thought, "Wow, this is also an acquaintance. Isn't this Main Yang?" He was about to speak when he saw Fanning staring at the man who had been carried out. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. This guy can't be Wu Hua, can he? Li Yundong looked over and saw that the man had been carried out by several big men and thrown to the ground with a thud. He was wearing a gray monk's robe, and there were a few scars on his bald head. Main Yang stood at the door of the shop with her hands on her hips and scolded, "You bald donkey, how dare you play with women on credit? Are you tired of living? If it weren't for the fact that you often hang around here, I would have broken your middle leg today." Main Yang's voice was sharp and crisp, and the monk's appearance and clothes were also extremely eye-catching. For a moment, he attracted countless gazes. Li Yundong, Su Chan, and Xueqi were all stunned. They saw that the monk had been beaten black and blue, and he was lying on the ground with a dirty face. He didn't look like a master at all. Li Yundong couldn't help shouting in his heart, "Damn it, this guy is not Wu Hua, this guy is not Wu Hua." But at this time, Fanning suddenly shouted in surprise, "Xixiang." This sentence sent Li Yundong to hell. He immediately burst into tears and said, "Damn it, this guy really doesn't have any flowers. The master is really a master. Wu Hua? I think he's a greedy man." Merry Christmas, everyone. Tang Tang, I had a stiff neck yesterday and the pain in my neck was unbearable. Today, I went out for a massage. Chapter 319. Go to watch net. When Wu Hua heard Fanning's voice, he immediately raised his head. There were still 2 blood-red nostrils hanging under his nose. He looked surprised. "Shirdi, you came at the right time. Lend me 600 yuan. When he said this, Fa Neng almost wanted to find a hole to crawl into. His face was purplish red, and he hummed and hawed for a long time. He dilly-dallied and refused to approach. Go to watch net. 7K. Oath M. Main Yang saw Li Yundong and the others and Fanning at a glance. She first said with a happy face, "Oh, isn't this Boss Li? How come you have time to come here today? Hey, it's really embarrassing for you to see this. Wait a minute, I'll deal with things here." With that, she turned around and glared at Fanning, saying, "Hey, is he your Xixiang? Is it great to be a monk? Don't you want to pay? Hurry up and pay the 600 yuan for him. Look at so many people here. Even if you're not ashamed, I'm ashamed for you." While she was talking, there were already many people gathered on the side of the road. Many people pointed at the scene and snickered. Fanning's face was as red as cinnabar. He searched all over his body and finally found 500 yuan. He said in a low voice, "That's all I have." Main Yang's eyes swept over them and she snatched them away. After a rough count, a smile suddenly appeared on her cold face. "Since you're paying, it's easy. Although the amount isn't right, seeing that you're monks, I'll give you a discount." After that, she turned around and giggled at Li Yundong. "Boss Li, I've missed you for a long time. How come you have time to play today? Mei Nyang glanced at Su Chan and Zhou Qin beside him and said in a sweet voice, if you want to play, just come and play. Why did you bring your friends here? We don't have a place to entertain female guests. Zhou Qin's face changed when she heard this, and she glared at Mei Nyang. Su Chan made a face at her and said, how shameless. We're here to look for someone. Mei Nyang asked curiously, looking for someone? Who are you looking for in this place? Those who come here are either guests or prostitutes. As she spoke, she glanced at Wu Hua and rolled her eyes. Could it be that you're looking for him? At this time, Wu Hua had already gotten up. His kasaya was wrinkled and covered in dirt. He looked as miserable as one could imagine. For a moment, Li Yunyang and the others were all embarrassed. They looked away one after another, not daring to admit that they had come to find Wu Hua. Mei Nyang's heart was as clear as a mirror. She sneered and rolled her eyes at Zhou Qin and Su Chan. You came to find a customer who doesn't pay, yet you're still so arrogant. Really, what kind of world is this? As she spoke, she turned around and walked back into the shop. Li Yundong felt like he was going crazy. What kind of world is this? Was this country really flourishing with prostitutes? Fanning waited for the people around him to disperse a little before he suppressed his shame and asked Wu Hua, Xixiang, what's wrong with you? Wu Hua patted the dust off his body and let out a long sigh. His originally embarrassed and dirty face actually showed a dignified look. Alas, I saw a female benefactor with a lot of wisdom here in the past few days. Originally, I wanted to enlighten her, so I went up to talk to her. I didn't expect that after chatting with her for 2 hours, she actually asked me to give her money for 2 hours when I came out. I went to the internet. 7K. Oath am. I'm just a monk. Where did I get the money? So I had to ask them for alms first, and then give it to them. Who would have thought that I would be treated like this? Alas, the moral degeneration of the world is getting worse and worse. At this time, Li Yundong and the others suddenly understood. Su Chan's mind was simple. She looked at Wu Hua with admiration and said, Master, you are so amazing. You can actually lie in the mud to enlighten all living beings. Zhou Qin said doubtfully, do you have to choose such a place to enlighten all living beings? Do you want to be a whore master? Wu Hua's face was solemn. Buddha was also a beggar. Why can't I be a whore master? At this time, Li Yundong was also a little confused. He thought to himself, is this guy a perverted monk or an eminent monk? He looked like a perverted monk just now, but now listening to his words, there was actually a hidden meaning in his words, vaguely like an eminent monk. Li Yundong thought for a moment, coughed dryly, and said, Master Wu Hua, I have something to ask of you. I wonder if you have time? Only then did Wu Hua turn his face and look at Li Yundong. He smiled slightly and said, Zhenren Li, right? Li Yundong asked curiously, how do you know my surname? Oh, by the way, Mei Nyang mentioned it before. Wu Hua shook his head and said, no, I took a lesson a few days ago. I had expected that you would come to me, so I have been going in and out of this place recently. Li Yundong was surprised. You guessed that I would come here? Then why didn't I see you last time? Wu Hua smiled slightly. The time is not right. Naturally, we can't meet. Seeing that Wu Hua's words were full of deep meaning, Li Yundong's suspicion of him was reduced a little, but he still had some doubts in his heart. He said, since you expected to see me here, how could you not expect to be thrown out in such a mess? Li Yundong's words were very rude, but Wu Hua's face was calm and unfathomable. He put his palms together and said, Amitba, how can a doctor cure himself? My fatality skill can help you, Zhenren Li, but it can't help me. Seeing that Wu Hua even knew the purpose of his trip, Li Yundong no longer had any doubts. He said respectfully, it turns out that you are indeed a master like Ji Dian. I was too naive. Wu Hua smiled and said, it doesn't matter. Zhenren Li, wait a moment. I'll talk to that female benefactor and come back. This time, my main purpose is to purify her. Let's go. As he said this, he pointed to a pretty woman standing at the gate of Crystal Love International Entertainment City not far away. Li Yundong looked in the direction of his finger, and saw that the woman was very beautiful. She was delicate and pitiful, and she couldn't hide her flirtatiousness. He thought to himself, this master is really good at choosing people to purify. He actually chose such a beautiful and sexy woman. It seems that he's also a lascivious monk. But on second thought, he couldn't help thinking, isn't it the same for me? Su Chan is beautiful. And Zhou Qin is even more beautiful. Not to mention Zi Yuan, she can be said to be a national beauty. What do they think of me? What right do I have to criticize Wu Hua? Thinking of this, Li Yundong suddenly felt relieved. He saw Wu Hua walk up to the woman and whisper something, but the woman kept wiping her tears and looking at Wu Hua with tears in her eyes. The two of them said goodbye reluctantly, as if they were reluctant to part with each other. Li Yundong watched from the side and felt strange. He thought to himself, is this master going to purify people or pick up girls? Beside him, Su Chan sighed with emotion in her heart. This master is not afraid of people's words to purify such a woman. He really has the demeanor of an eminent monk. However, Zhou Qin couldn't help looking at Wu Hua and the woman up and down, thinking to herself, this monk is not pure. He speaks in a dignified manner. He can hide it from Li Yundong, but he can't hide it from me. After Wu Hua finished talking to the woman, Wu Hua walked up to Li Yundong and put his palms together. Zhenren Li, I've kept you waiting for a long time. Let's go. Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, since I have something to ask of you, why don't you go to my place? I hope you don't mind. Wu Hua chuckled and said freely, haha, I can even go to this red light district. Why can't I go to the fox's den? When Li Yundong heard this, he couldn't help but dispel his doubts about Wu Hua. He smiled and said, thank you. As he said this, he glanced at Fanning beside him and said, Master Fanning, do you want to go with me? Fanning thought to himself, it's already bad luck for me to accompany you to this red light district to find Xixiang. How can I accompany you to the fox's den? Xixiang's cultivation is profound, but my cultivation is low. If I go to that kind of place, will I survive? Fanning shook his head like a rattle drum and begged for mercy. Zhenren Li, please spare me. I have to go back quickly. After that, he didn't have time to say goodbye to his Xixiang. Along the way, he lowered his head and looked straight ahead. He recited scriptures and suddenly fled the erotic red light street. Wu Hua looked at his figure, shook his head, and sighed. Pink skeletons, skeletons are pink. My Xixiang still can't see through them. Li Yundong said with admiration, Master, you play the world of mortals without getting involved. You're admirable. They stopped a car on the road and then headed for Mount Tianlong. Before getting in the car, Zhou Qin noticed that when Wu Hua got in the car, he glanced behind him intentionally or unintentionally. Zhou Qin saw his action and smiled in her heart, becoming more and more convinced of her judgment. When they arrived at the Fox Zen School of Mount Tianlong, Li Yundong walked into the Taoist temple with Wu Hua. The two little foxes, who were cleaning the front hall of the Taoist temple, saw a bald monk walking in with the leader. They looked at Wu Hua curiously from a distance and whispered to each other. Hey, why did the leader bring a bald donkey back? I don't know. It's so strange. Is he going to do the first 7 rites for the Grandmaster? I don't know, but you should say the former Grandmaster. But if he wants to do the first 7 rites, it seems that a bald donkey is a little too little. Li Yundong heard the two little foxes whispering to each other, and the word bald donkey kept coming out of their mouths. He glanced at Wu Hua awkwardly, only to see that Wu Hua's expression was as usual. While admiring him in his heart, he couldn't help sighing. These little foxes really lack discipline. He turned his head, glared at the two little foxes and shouted, What are you talking about? Go and do your own things. Li Yundong had already established his dominance in the gazebo behind the school. As soon as he shouted at them, the two little foxes shuddered in fear. They looked at each other and ran to the other houses, slamming the door shut behind them. Only pairs of curious and frightened eyes could be seen peeking out from the crack of the door. Li Yundong was shocked. Seeing this scene, Wu Hua smiled slightly and said, Zhenren Li is so powerful. Li Yundong laughed dryly and said, My disciples are naughty. I'm sorry to make you laugh. After they arrived at Li Yundong's residence, Li Yundong saw that Chao Yi, Lu Yuehong, Zhuang Yuting, and the others were also alarmed, so he greeted them with a smile. Li Yundong glanced around and asked casually, Why isn't Zhang Sun Hong here? Chao Yi, Zhuang Yuting, and Lu Yuehong looked at each other, And Xueqi quickly said, "Fourth Shiji is cultivating in the backyard." Li Yundong didn't take it seriously and just roughly explained what had happened. Xueqi and the others were surprised and delighted. They said to Wu Hua one after another, "Master Wu Hua, you don't mind our Fox Zen school coming here with a bad reputation. Everyone in the Fox Zen school is grateful for your kindness. If you can help us find the whereabouts of junior sister Wu Shuang, we will definitely thank you." Li Yundong laughed and said, "You guys are really good at flattering me. As the leader, I don't have anything to say." His words made everyone around him burst into laughter. Li Yundong smiled, turned around, and said to Wu Hua, "Master, please use your supernatural power to help us find Yan Feng's whereabouts." However, Wu Hua turned his head, looked at Xueqi and the others, and said, "The law can't be spread to 6 ears. One person had 2 ears, 2 people had 4 ears, and 3 people had 6 ears." The meaning of Wu Hua's words was too obvious. Xueqi and the others immediately came to their senses and said to Li Yundong, "Leader, we'll go down first." After Xueqi and the others left, Wu Hua still stared at Zhou Qin and Su Chan, still refusing to speak. Zhou Qin had no choice but to say to Li Yundong, "Master, I have something to do first." Su Chan was the only one who refused to leave, relying on her close relationship with Li Yundong and asking about the whereabouts of her master. However, when Wu Hua saw that she didn't leave, he also refused to speak. He just looked down, put his palms together, and recited the scriptures silently. Seeing that he didn't speak, Su Chan reached out and pulled at Li Yundong's sleeve, looking at him with a pitiful expression. Seeing her like this, Li Yundong couldn't help but plead for her. "Master Wu Hua, Su Chan is my girlfriend, and Ao Wu Shuang, who was taken away by Yan Feng, is her master. She is not an outsider. Don't you need to leave?" Wu Hua didn't even look at him and repeated, "The law can't be spread to 6 ears." Li Yundong saw that Wu Hua's attitude was firm. Anyway, only 2 people could say it, not 3. It was up to him to decide which 2. He couldn't help but say to Su Chan with a wry smile, "Then I'll leave for a while?" No matter how childish Su Chan was, she knew that there was no reason for Li Yundong to avoid the matter. She had no choice but to say unhappily, Then I'll go." She looked at Li Yundong eagerly, then at Wu Hua. She walked to the door and said pitifully, "Then I'll go." Li Yundong smiled and said, "It's not a life and death separation. Why do you have to make it so scary?" Su Chan nodded and turned to leave. Li Yundong turned around and said to Wu Hua, "Master, now there are only 4 ears left. Can you tell me?" However, Wu Hua smiled slightly, raised his eyes to look at the door, and said in a clear voice, "Come out." "Why are you hiding? Do you think that this little invisibility technique can hide from my eyes?" As soon as he finished speaking, Su Chan's figure appeared at the door. She made a face at Wu Hua and said, "Master, you are really amazing. I'm convinced. I'll leave now." As she said this, she stuck out her tongue at Li Yundong and then ran away. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought to himself, "This little girl is getting more and more naughty." He coughed dryly and said to Wu Hua, "Now can you tell me?" Chapter 320. Go to watch net. Wu Hua glanced at him, raised his index finger meaningfully, and said, "If you want to hear the true method, you need to be sincere. Go to watch net." After that he closed his eyes. Li Yundong stared blankly and was confused. Need to be sincere? How sincere would it be? I went to invite him in person and brought him here. Am I not sincere? This master is really arrogant, isn't he? Li Yundong asked tentatively, "Master, are you a little hungry? Do you want to eat something first?" Wu Hua closed his eyes and recited the scriptures softly, as if he hadn't heard Li Yundong's words and didn't pay any attention to him. Li Yundong smiled dryly and asked, "Master, are you tired from the journey and want to have a good rest?" Wu Hua was still the same. If it weren't for the fact that he was still reciting the scriptures in a low voice, Li Yundong would have thought that he had passed away. Li Yundong said helplessly, "Master, do you want a good room?" Wu Hua was still going his own way. He simply recited the scripture, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." Li Yundong, who was beside him, saw that he had found Wu Hua and invited him here. He was about to know the whereabouts of Ao Wu Shuang, but he suddenly began to play tricks. He was depressed. He asked a few more questions in a row, but Wu Hua still ignored him. He almost went crazy and couldn't help but want to lose his temper, but on second thought, he rushed out of the room. Su Chan, Zhou Qin, Chao Yi, and the others who were waiting for him outside the room saw him come out, and they all surrounded him and asked, Yundong, what did Master Wu Hua say? Where is my master? Master, what did this monk say? Leader, where is my shimmy? Li Yundong was already depressed. Hearing their quarrel, he became more and more annoyed. He raised his hand and said angrily, Shut up. As soon as Li Yundong lost his temper, the women next to him immediately fell silent and looked at him eagerly. Li Yundong said gloomily, This master is playing tricks with me. He told me that if I want to know the true method, I need to be sincere. Chowie couldn't help but ask, Leader, what did you say? Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, I asked him if he was hungry. Everyone asked in unison. What did he say? Li Yundong shrugged. He ignored me. Watch net. Su Chan then asked, Yundong, did you ask him again? Li Yundong said gloomily, Yes, I asked him more than a dozen questions in a row, but he ignored me. He just kept chanting the scriptures. No matter how hard I asked, I couldn't get any clues, so I had to come out. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Su Chan couldn't help but complain. Isn't this master too unfathomable? However, Chao Yi shook her head and said, No, it's true that the true method is unpleasant. In ancient times, the Yellow Emperor Shen Yuan asked Chibo for help. He came to visit him again and again, but the door was shut in his face. In the end, he fasted for half a month and bathed and changed his clothes before receiving the teachings. Chibo then taught the Yellow Emperor Shen Yuan the skills of health cultivation. In the end, the Yellow Emperor was able to become an immortal. Li Yundong sucked in a breath of cold air. Do I have to fast for half a month? Chao Yi said solemnly, fasting to show piety is a rule of Buddhism. Leader, please accommodate him. Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, What's so great about eating vegetarian food for half a month? I can eat vegetarian food for a year. The problem is that I have a lot of things to do now. How can I have time to stay here for half a month? Chao Yi was also in a dilemma. She knew that Li Yundong was running around for the livelihood of the Fox Zen school. As a person who didn't produce anything, she couldn't help him, so she naturally couldn't say anything. She could only ask tentatively, Leader, can you ask Master Wu Hua what he means? Li Yundong nodded and said, Okay, I'll ask. After that, he walked into the room again, but not long after, he came out again with a sad face. As soon as he saw them, he spread out his hands and said, Still the same, ignore me. Everyone was disappointed. Su Chan couldn't help asking, Does Master Wu Hua want money? As soon as she said this, everyone looked at her in unison. Chao Yi couldn't help scolding, Chaner, how can you say that about Master Wu Hua? How can a monk be so vulgar? Li Yundong also pretended to be angry and glared at her. Even if you want to talk nonsense, don't you know to keep your voice down? If Master Wu Hua hears it, he will be angry and leave. What should we do? Su Chan lowered her head with a wronged face, rubbed the corner of her clothes with her fingers, and murmured, I just want to help. It's just a random guess. When Chao Yi heard this, she suddenly had an idea. She said in a low voice, By the way, some masters like calligraphy and paintings or antiques. Leader, you might as well ask if Master Wu Hua has any such hobbies. Li Yundong said, Okay, I'll ask around. Before he finished speaking, he walked into the room again, but not long after, he came out again. Go to the internet. Everyone looked at him eagerly. When he walked up to them and sighed, they also sighed heavily in disappointment. Li Yundong said with a wry smile, Why do I feel like we are playing a game of guess? As expected, this master was from the Zen sect. Why did he have to hit the nail on the head and make people guess everything? How can he stand it? He thought to himself, Zi Yuan is the best at this kind of thing. She is smarter than others, so she must have a way to guess what Master Wu Hua is thinking. Unfortunately, she is not here now. Of course, Li Yundong knew that he couldn't say this out loud, otherwise the little girl would feel sad and remorseful again. Just when everyone was at a loss, Zhou Qin, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly said, I think I may know what Master Wuhua is thinking. Li Yundong and the others suddenly became spirited. They looked at her and asked, "Tell me quickly." Zhou Qin thought for a moment and said, "Logically speaking, the people of Buddhism should be pure and have no desires. But in the past few days, I've been following my master and found that cultivation also requires daily necessities. The people of our Taoist sects are like this, so there's no reason why the people of Buddhism don't have such needs. Moreover, monks don't produce, so they have to beg alms to maintain their own lives." Li Yundong couldn't help saying, "But I've already inquired about it just now. Master Wuhua doesn't care about me at all." Zhou Qin shook her head and said, "No, I don't think that's what Master Wuhua is asking for. In my previous life, some officials asked each other for help, and it was always tit for tat. I promoted your people, and you also promoted mine. So, I'm thinking, since we are asking Master Wuhua to help us find a person, is he also asking us to help him find a person?" Su Chan and Chao Yi asked at the same time, "Who?" Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. He opened his mouth and said in surprise, "No way, could it be?" Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong and nodded. "Yes, I guess this is the person Master Wuhua wants." Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Please, he is an eminent monk, okay? How could he want a young lady to negotiate terms with him? Zhou Qin smiled slightly. "Master, I have been paying attention to Master Wuhua and the young lady who is reluctant to part with him. I found that Master Wuhua is not only impure, but also has hidden feelings for this young lady. When he left, his eyes were full of attachment, and he even looked back at her. So, I think Master Wuhua wants us to help him find this young lady and save her from suffering." Li Yundong pondered for a while and was about to go into the room to ask Wuhua, but Zhou Qin stopped him and said in a low voice, How can you ask such a thing? Even if you ask, he will still ignore you. You just need to find her. If she's not here, then let her go back. It's just a waste of money for us to go there." Li Yundong thought for a moment and said with a strange face, "I think what you said makes sense, but I still don't believe that Master Wuhua means this." But even though he said that, he still decided to do as Zhou Qin told him. Li Yundong said, "Well, I'll go by myself." Su Chan hurriedly said, "Yundong, I can't do without you. You stay here, and I'll go. Anyway, I know the way." Li Yundong looked at her hesitantly. "You go? Do you know where that place is?" Su Chan put her palms together with a smile and said pretentiously, "Amitba, if I don't go to hell, who will?" Li Yundong laughed. He knew that the little girl wanted to help him share some things, so she was so active. He couldn't stop her, so he pinched the little girl's cheek affectionately and said, "Be careful on the way. Do you have money with you?" Su Chan said with a smile, "I have money." After that she slipped away. After watching Su Chan leave, Li Yundong turned around and said to Zhou Qin jokingly, "If you guess wrong, I will punish you by making you eat vegetarian food for half a month." Zhou Qin pursed her lips and smiled. "Are there any meat dishes here?" Only then did Li Yundong remember that the Fox Zen School had always provided vegetarian food and ingredients. There was no meat at all. He laughed. The group waited for nearly 2 hours. Just as Li Yundong was getting a little worried, he suddenly heard Su Chan's voice from afar. She was like a general who had returned to the court after a victory. She began to announce the good news from afar. "Yundong, I'm back." Li Yundong turned around like a gust of wind. As soon as he turned around, he saw the little girl throw herself into his arms like a gust of wind. She put her arms around his waist and giggled. When Li Yundong saw that the little girl had come back, his heart fell back into his chest. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a very coquettish and enchanting voice. "Hey, I, Main Yang, made my debut at the age of 16. I've been doing business for so long, but it's the first time I've seen someone doing business here. Good creativity, good environment, amazing, amazing. I admire you." Li Yundong raised his head when he heard the voice. At a glance, he saw Main Yang walking over, dressed in nude clothes. Beside her was a beautiful and delicate woman in a long white dress. Main Yang walked up to Li Yundong and the others and giggled. "Oh, Boss Li, I can see you everywhere." She looked around and said flirtatiously, "Is this all your property? I didn't expect that Boss Li would have such a fortune at such a young age. You're amazing. I admire you." When Li Yundong saw this woman, he was surprised and surprised. Aren't you Mei Nyang? Why are you here? Mei Nyang pretended to be sad and hurt. What? Don't you want me to come? Well, forget it. I'm old and faded. You, Boss Li, are young and rich. Naturally, you don't miss me. How can I compare to Xiao Zhu, who is young, beautiful, and delicate? Boss Li only took one look at me and you've been thinking about me ever since. When Li Yundong saw her pretending to speak, he couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. He said, Mei Nyang, this is an important place of Taoism. It doesn't seem appropriate for you to come here, does it? Mei Nyang giggled and said with a hidden meaning, Oh, Boss Li, look at what you're saying. My subordinate's daughter can come here, but I can't? You also know that this is a Taoist temple? However, for you to be able to think of doing business here, I can't compare to your creativity. I, Mei Nyang, am willing to admit defeat. Besides, Xiao Zhu is my red card. I rely on her to make a living. This is her first time coming out, so I have to keep an eye on her, right? Li Yundong was depressed in his heart. Well, she thought that he was going to come out and call her miss. But on second thought, he realized that he was calling her miss to come out. But what was even more depressing was that before he could open his mouth to answer Mei Nyang's words, he saw No Flower suddenly walk out of the house. When Xiao Zhu, who was dressed in white and plain clothes, saw No Flower, she was immediately overjoyed and ran over. The two of them held hands and looked at each other with tearful eyes, looking like infatuated children. Both Li Yundong and Mei Nyang were dumbfounded. Li Yundong was a cultivator after all, so he quickly came to his senses. He unconsciously glanced at Zhou Qin and thought to himself, Zhou Qin guessed right. However, Mei Nyang couldn't help but say, I, Mei Nyang, made my debut at the age of 16. I've been doing business for so long. I've seen good people do good things, but I've never seen such a good thing. Boss Li, did you call Xiao Zhu to come out just to let this monk take advantage of her? Li Yundong hadn't expected that Mei Nyang would also come. At this time, Mei Nyang's words almost made him vomit blood in his heart. I'm a dignified cultivator and the leader of the Fox Zen School. Now I have a little reputation, but I didn't expect to become a pimp today. If this gets out, it will be a big joke. I just wanted to find Master Wu Hua to ask about Ao Wushuang's whereabouts. How could I have expected it to become like this? What the F***ck is going on here? Merry Christmas, everyone! Chapter 321. Go to Watch Network. After hearing Mei Nyang's words, Li Yundong's face darkened, as if he were the reincarnation of the kitchen god. He remained silent with a dark face. Su Chan, Zhou Qin, and the others of the Fox Zen School were all very sensitive people. When they saw Li Yundong's dark face, they all remained silent carefully. Only Mei Nyang looked at Wu Hua and Xiao Zhu and sighed. She said, I thought that you fell in love with Xiao Zhu at first sight, but I didn't expect that you would let this monk take advantage of you. TSK, Boss Li, you are really pious. Li Yundong's face became darker and darker. He said in a deep voice, Don't talk nonsense. Master Wu Hua is an eminent monk. He just wants to. Before he could finish his words, he suddenly saw Wu Hua holding Xiao Zhu's hand. The two of them walked into the room in pairs. When Master Wu Hua entered the room, he turned around, grinned at Li Yundong, and then closed the door. Li Yundong's eyes widened and he couldn't help saying, Damn, what are you doing? Mei Nyang curled her lips and said casually, A young man and a young woman are alone in a room. What else can they do? TSK, Boss Li, are you still a virgin? Li Yundong flew into a rage out of humiliation. You talk too much. Do you think I don't know? But in his heart, he cursed, even if Wu Hua wants to convert this woman, don't make it so ambiguous, okay? Now I have a piece of mud in my crotch. Even if it's not SH*T, it's H*T. Mei Nyang covered her mouth and looked Li Yundong up and down. Boss Li, are you really a virgin? Her eyes seemed to have seen a peerless treasure, an extinct creature. Li Yundong felt even more depressed. Before he could lose his temper, Su Chan, who was beside him, was unhappy. She couldn't help but say angrily, You are really annoying. If you don't speak, No one will treat you as a mute. Xueqi also said with a cold face, "How much is the introduction fee? Take the money and leave." Li Yundong glared at Xueqi. "What introduction fee? This is not an introduction fee." Seeing that these people were angry, Main Yang quickly smiled and said, "Well, it's not an introduction. Boss Li, whatever you say. As long as you pay, everything is negotiable." Li Yundong said with a livid face, "How much?" "I'll pay." Lady May rolled her eyes and raised 2 fingers. "Fixed price, 2,000. 2,000. Xueqi and Su Chan shouted in unison. Xueqi said angrily, "Do you think you're a fairy from heaven? The appearance fee is 2,000 yuan? Main Yang said leisurely, "I don't think she's a fairy who came to the human world from heaven, but Xiao Zhu is indeed from the tavern heaven on earth. A while ago, the tavern heaven on earth was closed down, so Xiao Zhu went to Dongguan. Dongguan is now experiencing a typhoon, so she came to me." Xueqi was so angry that her face turned red. She raised her eyebrows and was about to scold him when Li Yundong quickly stopped her. He said impatiently, "Well, 2,000 is fine. Take the money and leave quickly. Watch net." After that, he counted 2,000 yuan and handed it to Main Yang. Then he ordered her to leave. "Count it. I won't give you a penny. Hurry up and go back to where you came from." Main Yang skillfully counted the money and then put it in her pocket. She smiled and said, "Boss Li, why are you so heartless? I came with Xiao Zhu, so I naturally have to go with her. Your Tianlong Taoist temple is quite famous. I'll look around today and take it as a trip." As she said this, she walked to other parts of the Taoist temple alone. When she reached the corner, she turned around and waved to Li Yundong. "Boss Li, don't worry about me. I'll just look around." Li Yundong was so angry at Main Yang that he was seething with anger. Su Chan, Xueqi, and the others even cursed in the direction Main Yang had left. But at this time, the laughter of men and women came from the room again. Li Yundong and the others were all cultivators. Although the sound was soft, they could hear it very clearly. Xueqi smiled awkwardly and said, "Master Wu Hua is indeed an eminent monk. The way an eminent monk does things is indeed different." Although Xueqi hadn't started cultivating, the Yuan Yin and Yuan Yang qi in her body was not shallow. She also heard the voice clearly. As her cheeks turned slightly red, she sneered and said, "What eminent monk? I think he's a perverted monk, and he's the first perverted monk in history." Although Li Yundong somewhat agreed with Xueqi's words in his heart, he was asking Wu Hua for help at this time. Subconsciously, he didn't want to see Wu Hua as such a perverted person, so he scolded, "Xueqi, don't talk nonsense. Maybe he is really enlightening this woman." Xueqi was unconvinced and said, "Is there such a way? Unless this Master Wu Hua is a Buddha of joy." Li Yundong pulled a long face and shouted at Xueqi, Su Chan, and the other foxes of the Fox Zen school who were watching the fun. "What are you all doing here? Go away. Are you eavesdropping?" As he shouted, some of the little foxes who had come to watch the fun quickly fled in all directions. Only Su Chan, Xueqi, Chao Yi, and the others followed Li Yundong away from the house. They went to see the net. 7K. Oath M. Xueqi said to Li Yundong, "Master, it's not that I'm being mean, but I bet that this Wu Hua must be a perverted monk." Li Yundong glanced at her and said angrily, "What are you betting on?" Xueqi snorted and said, "I bet it will take him a long time to come out." Li Yundong was stunned. "Why are you betting on this?" Xueqi said with a slightly red face. "A man and a woman alone in a room. What else can they do?" Only then did Li Yundong understand. He scolded with a smile, "Nonsense. Can you bet on such a thing?" As soon as he finished speaking, the room suddenly creaked. The door opened to the left and right, and Wu Hua came out and walked straight toward Li Yundong. Li Yundong laughed, turned his head, and said to Xueqi in a low voice, "I told you that Master Wu Hua is not a perverted monk. Look, isn't he coming out now?" Seeing Wu Hua walking toward him, he took 2 steps forward, put his palms together, and asked, "Master, what can I do for you?" Wu Hua's face was solemn. He put his palms together and stared at Li Yundong. He sighed but didn't say anything. Li Yundong asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Is there anything you're not satisfied with? Wu Hua shook his head but still didn't speak. Li Yundong couldn't help looking back at Zhou Qin, asking her with his eyes to see if she knew what Wu Hua was thinking. But Zhou Qin was also confused at this time. She didn't know why Wu Hua had come out. Zhou Qin shook her head at Li Yundong blankly, indicating that she didn't know. Seeing that Zhou Qin didn't know either, Li Yundong couldn't help but look at Su Chan, Chao Yi, and the others. He saw that they were also at a loss and shook their heads blankly. He was going crazy in his heart and thought, "You bald donkey, you always pretend to be mysterious all day long. If you have something to say, can't you just say it? Just say what you want. If you want a lady, I will find her for you." Li Yundong suppressed his anger and bowed to Master Wu Hua with his palms together. "Master, if you have something to say, just say it. I will do it if I can." Wu Hua let out a long sigh and said, "Zhenren Li, you helped me find Xiao Zhu. I was so grateful. I wanted to talk about the old days with her, but I didn't expect." Seeing that he was stuck at the critical moment, Li Yundong hurriedly asked, "What didn't you expect?" Wu Hua sighed regretfully and said, "I didn't expect that there was no condom." As he said this, Wu Hua looked at Li Yundong eagerly and seriously. "Zhenren Li, do you have a condom?" F***CK. Li Yundong and the others were so shocked that they almost died. Li Yundong's eyes widened, and he couldn't speak for a long time. Zhou Qin's expression was strange, and the corners of her mouth twitched. It seemed that she wanted to laugh, but she tried her best to hold it back and didn't dare to. Chao Yi's expression was even more strange. She glanced at Li Yundong, then quickly turned around, covering her mouth with her hand and shrugging her shoulders. Su Chan didn't understand at first, but she quickly realized what was going on. Her face flushed red and she burst out laughing. As soon as she laughed, she saw Li Yundong and Wu Hua looking at her at the same time. Su Chan quickly covered her mouth with her hands and opened her eyes wide. She looked at Li Yundong and then at Wu Hua. Li Yundong's eyes were full of resentment, but Wu Hua looked at her in confusion and asked, "Benefactress, what are you laughing at?" Su Chan didn't dare to speak. She was afraid that as soon as she opened her mouth, she would laugh herself to death. The little girl quickly shook her head like a rattle. Wu Hua sighed and said, "Buddha said that there is no self, no living beings. Benefactress, do you know what this means? You are obsessed." Li Yundong was already convinced that Wu Hua was a lascivious monk. He was full of resentment and thought angrily, F***CK, you are obviously the first lascivious monk since ancient times. Why are you still pretending to be an eminent monk? I've discovered it. Could it be that you're an eminent monk among the perverted monks, a perverted monk among eminent monks? Li Yundong pulled a long face and said, "Master Wu Hua, I only know the Anatta set and the Anatta set." Wu Hua looked surprised. "What does that mean?" Li Yundong said with a black face, "It means that I don't have a set here, and no one else has one either." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Chan, Zhou Qin, Chao Yi, and the others couldn't help laughing out loud. However, as soon as they laughed out loud, they felt that it was inappropriate and quickly covered their mouths, almost breaking their intestines. Chao Yi tried hard to hold back her laughter and said to Li Yundong, "Leader, I still have some things to do, Aya." Before she could finish her words, she turned around and left. As she walked, she shrugged her shoulders and burst into laughter. Li Yundong glanced at Chao Yi's back and saw that Su Chan and Zhou Qin had been holding back for a while, but in the end, they couldn't help it. One was squatting on the ground, and the other was shaking with laughter. Li Yundong glared at them and said, "What are you laughing at?" Hearing his shout, Su Chan and Zhou Qin gasped and stopped laughing at the same time. However, their bodies were trembling, their eyebrows were twitching, the corners of their eyes were twitching, and their faces were so distorted that it was almost unrecognizable. Seeing them like this, Li Yundong couldn't help laughing out loud. He waved his hand and shouted, "Get out of here and laugh." Su Chan and Zhou Qin felt as if they had been pardoned. They quickly ran away and disappeared. After a while, there was a burst of wild laughter. Li Yundong looked in the direction in which the two of them had gone, feeling angry and amused. He turned around and sighed helplessly at Wu Hua, saying, "Master, I don't know if you are deliberately torturing me or something, but for the sake of my sincerity, please don't play with me. Tell me where Ao Wushuang is." Wu Hua chuckled, put his palms together, and said, I didn't deliberately torment you. I just did whatever I thought of. You Taoists say that cultivation is unhindered, and we Buddhists also say that we can do whatever we want. You may think that I am a lascivious monk, but that's normal. Since I started cultivating, I have always been reckless. Not only did I change the name that my master gave me, but I also went to all kinds of entertainment places. I really don't look like a monk. Hee hee, others laugh at me for being too crazy, but I laugh at them for not seeing through me. You want to ask about Ao Wushuang's whereabouts, don't you? It's very simple. I can tell you now. Li Yundong was overjoyed and quickly asked, "Where is she?" Wu Hua said meaningfully, "She's far away, but close at hand." As soon as he finished speaking, Li Yundong heard an extremely frightened and shrill scream coming from the direction of the Taoist temple. Chapter 322. Go to watch net. As soon as Li Yundong heard this voice, he was shocked and immediately ran to the place where the voice came from. Go to watch net. 7K. Oath M. When he arrived at the scene, Li Yundong took a look and immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. He was shocked and angry. There was a coffin in the southwest corner of the Taoist temple. On the coffin was the memorial tablet of the former leader, Lu Yi. However, the lid of the coffin had been pushed open, and it was empty inside. Next to the coffin lay the bodies of two women, one near and one far away. They had been squeezed dry, and their faces were haggard, like mummies that had been dried for thousands of years. They looked extremely horrible. Li Yundong saw that the one in the distance was wearing revealing and sexy clothes. Her clothes were a little messy. From her clothes, he could tell that this person was Mei Nyang, and the one close by was wearing a Taoist robe. She was probably a disciple of the Fox Zen school, but because her body had been squeezed dry, her face was very different, so Li Yundong couldn't tell who she was for a while. But before long, Su Chan, Chao Yi, and the others also arrived. When Chao Yi saw this scene, she was so shocked that her eyes widened and she cried out involuntarily, "Fourth Shiji!" Zhou Qin didn't know how to control herself, so she just ran over and was the last one to arrive. When she arrived, everyone from the Fox Zen school had already arrived. She looked at the scene and was shocked. She couldn't help covering her mouth, her face full of horror. Li Yundong looked at Chao Yi with a livid face. "Is this Zhang Sun Hong?" Chao Yi was frightened and said in a trembling voice, "This is my fourth Shiji's clothes. Look at the belt. There is a yellow brocade pouch next to it. This is my fourth Shiji's powerful magical weapon, the colorful brocade pouch." Li Yundong was shocked and angry. He hadn't expected that after he took over the sect, someone would kill his disciples under his nose, and there were outsiders around. Li Yundong glanced at Mei Nyang, who had also been squeezed dry. He turned to Wu Hua, who was constantly chanting scriptures with his palms together, and said, "Master, you just said that it's far away, but close at hand. Is it referring to what's happening right now?" Wu Hua lowered his eyes and said, "Ba, I can't say it, I can't say it." Li Yundong said angrily, "Do you still want to play tricks on me? Don't you know the fate connection? Don't tell me you don't know the ins and outs of this matter?" Wu Hua laughed hoarsely. "Zhenren Li, if I knew everything in this world, I would have become a Buddha long ago. Even Buddha himself couldn't see through all the confusing things in this world with a pair of eyes, let alone me. I could only see a tiny bit of it. You cultivators who practice Taoist techniques can't kill people with magic. It's the same for me. I can't completely reveal the secrets of heaven, otherwise, there will be a heavenly tribulation. Watch net." Only then did Li Yunyang's anger dissipate a lot. He glanced around and saw that all the disciples of the Fox Zen school had expressions of fear on their faces. Those who were on good terms with Zhang Sun Hong were even secretly wiping tears. Li Yundong's face was livid and he was speechless for a moment. However, Zhou Qin gently pulled his arm and whispered, "Master, should we call the police?" "Call the police?" Li Yundong sneered. "How? What should I say to the police? Do you want to be reconciled?" Li Yundong's eyes were sharp as he glanced at Chao Yi and asked, "Why is the coffin of the former leader here?" Chao Yi looked at Zhang Sun Hong's body and secretly shed tears. When she heard Li Yundong's question, she quickly wiped away her tears and said, "Today is the 7th day of the former leader's death. We elders of the Fox Zen school had a private discussion and decided to pay our respects to the former leader. However, we were afraid that you would think too much, so we didn't tell you. After you came back, I wanted Zhang Sun Hong to come with us to see you, but she said that she couldn't be alone here and that she could just stay here, so she didn't come with us." Speaking of this, Xueqi couldn't help but burst into tears. "It's all my fault. If I hadn't agreed to her request, she wouldn't have died." As soon as she cried, the other disciples of the Fox Zen school who had been with Zhang Sun Hong all day long also burst into tears. For a moment, the backyard was filled with cries, and the atmosphere was gloomy. Although Su Chan had left the Fox Zen school since she was a child, she still grieved for her own kind. When she saw that her Sherbua had been killed, she couldn't help but cry. Li Yundong flew into a rage and shouted, "Bastard!" No one knew whether he was scolding the crying disciples or the murderer, but after he shouted, the crying suddenly stopped. The disciples of the Fox Zen school were so scared that they only dared to sob in a low voice. Watch Net. Su Chan had rarely seen him so angry. She carefully pulled his sleeve with her hand and whispered, "Yun. Leader, don't be angry." His heart softened, and his voice softened a lot. He sighed and said, "Don't be afraid. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at myself. I didn't protect you well. I'm not qualified to be the leader of the sect." As soon as he said this, Xueqi and the others said one after another, "Leader, if you say that, we will be ashamed." "Yes, sect leader. This matter is not your fault. I don't know which vicious cultivator killed fourth Sherbua." Li Yundong looked at Wu Hua and asked, "Master Wu Hua, do you really not know who killed my disciple Zhang Sun Hong?" Wu Hua put his palms together and said, "Zhenren Li, a monk doesn't lie. I really don't know. But what I know is that if you find the murderer, you will find the whereabouts of Ao Wushuang." Li Yundong clenched his fists and secretly remembered what he had said. Suddenly, his eyes fell on Mei Nyang and he couldn't help but feel a headache. Now this woman died in our Taoist temple, and her death is so bizarre. What should we do? If the police find out, there will be trouble. He was frowning when he suddenly heard a timid voice beside him. "I have a way." When everyone heard this, they immediately looked in the direction of the voice and saw that it was Xiao Zhu, who had come with Mei Nyang. Xiao Zhu hid behind Wu Hua timidly and whispered, "Mei Nyang doesn't have any relatives. I can go back and say that she has gone back to her hometown. She usually treats people very harshly, so no one will ask about her whereabouts." Li Yundong was a little surprised to see that Xiao Zhu, an ordinary person, dared to speak boldly in front of such a scene. He couldn't help but take another look at her, nodded to her, and said, "Although this is the only thing we can do right now, this is a living life after all. I, Li Yundong, will definitely find a way to help Mei Nyang's soul in heaven find the murderer." When Xiao Zhu saw him looking at her, she was so scared that she quickly hid behind Wu Hua, not daring to speak again. Xueqi looked at Mei Nyang's body and couldn't help laughing bitterly. Her body has been sucked dry, and her soul must have been sucked away. She has no soul in heaven for a long time. When Li Yundong heard this, he suddenly shivered. He suddenly widened his eyes and said, "I remember that Yi Yu was once hit by Moashi's threaded hairpin of soul traversal. Wasn't her flesh and blood sucked away and her soul devoured?" Su Chan, who was standing to one side, also said loudly, Yes, I remember Moashi. Ah no, when Yen Fong and second Sherbua Gufeng made love, Yen Fong used the threaded hairpin of soul traversal to kill Gufeng and sucked his flesh and soul dry. Could it be that these two people are also like this?" Li Yundong couldn't help but say in surprise. Could it be that Yen Fong has taken the threaded hairpin of soul traversal and has been lurking in this Taoist temple? As soon as his voice fell, everyone couldn't help but shiver. Although Yen Fong had lost her physical body and could not use powerful magic, her forbearance and ferocity were really chilling. If it was really her, there was no one in the Fox Zen school who wouldn't shiver and be afraid except for Li Yundong. From Xueqi and the other older generation to Su Chan and the other younger generation of the Fox Zen school, they couldn't help thinking, if Yen Fong is by my side then. For a moment, when the people of the Fox Zen school thought of this, they all looked terrified. Fortunately, Xueqi was still calm. She calmed down a little and said in a hoarse voice, "Leader, wasn't the threaded hairpin of soul traversal taken away last time?" Li Yundong asked, "Could it have been Yen Fong who did it?" Xueqi shook her head and said, "Last time, it was a gust of black smoke that took away the threaded hairpin of soul traversal. This kind of kung fu of transforming form into qi can only be performed with a physical body. At that time, Yan Feng's yang spirit was out of her body, so she didn't have this ability. Judging from the situation at that time, Zhang Yuan, the leader of the Yin-Yang sect in Mount Wuhua, is the most suspicious. As soon as Li Yundong heard Zhang Yuan's name, he couldn't help but say angrily, "This be ****starred. We had a grudge against him last time. How dare he take the initiative to come to us this time? Isn't he afraid that I will destroy the Yin-Yang sect in Mount Wuhua?" Su Chan also said with red eyes, "Yes, it must be him. Last time we messed up his plan, so this time he sneaked into our Fox Zen school to kill people and take our treasures to vent his anger." Li Yundong was stunned. "Take treasures? What treasures?" Su Chan pointed to the coffin and said angrily, "The coffin of the former leader has been opened, and his body and powerful magical weapon are gone. If this isn't killing people and taking their treasures, then what is?" Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat, and he looked pensive. He thought for a moment and said, "Since it's killing people and taking their treasures, why didn't they take Zhang Sun Hong's colorful brocade pouch?" Chao Yi sighed and said, "The powerful magical weapon of the former leader is the Heaven and Earth Jasper Pole, which is one of the top treasures in the world. If the gangster wanted to take the treasure, he would naturally not take a fancy to a powerful magical weapon like Fourth Shiji's. Fourth Shiji's is just a small powerful magical weapon. The 2 brocade pouches I gave to you last time are only one-time use, but such a powerful magical weapon is permanent. Not only can it carry a large number of things with it, but it will never be damaged." Hearing this, Li Yundong frowned and asked again, "Then can you tell if the scream you heard just now was from Zhang Sun Hong?" Chao Yi, Lu Yuehong, Zhuang Yiting, and the others looked at each other and shook their heads. Li Yundong's frown deepened, and he didn't speak for a moment. Wu Hua, who was standing to one side, suddenly said to Li Yundong, "Zhenren Li, such a big thing has happened to your sect. I'd better not stay any longer. I'd better leave first." Li Yundong didn't want to keep him at this time, so he said to Wu Hua, "I wanted to invite you to stay for a meal, but now that such a thing has happened to our Fox Zen school, my heart is in a mess. I'm not in the mood to accompany you anymore, so I can only apologize." Wu Hua put his palms together and bowed. "It doesn't matter. However, Zhenren Li, you have to pay more attention. Everything in this world is always connected by cause and effect. Even if there is no wind, there must be a reason. That's all I have to say. I hope it will be of help to you." After that, he turned around, patted Xiao Zhu on the shoulder, and led her out of the Fox Zen school. Li Yundong watched him leave, and his eyes were a little confused for a moment. He pondered over the words left by No Hua over and over again. He seemed to understand something in his heart, but more fog rushed toward him, almost drowning him. Chapter 323. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong pondered for a while, then raised his head and said to Chao Yi and the others of the Fox Zen school, "You take the other disciples to your room first. Everyone stay together and don't separate. Go to the Fox Zen school." Chao Yi nodded and left the place with Zhuang Yiting and Lu Yuehong with the little foxes of the Fox Zen school. As soon as they left, the sound of chattering and crying suddenly disappeared. For a moment, the backyard was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Su Chan saw that the coffin was open, and there were 2 dried corpses lying on the ground. The surroundings were so quiet that she couldn't help but feel a little scared. She couldn't help but move closer to Li Yundong and tug at the corner of his clothes. "Yundong, why did you ask Sherbua and the others to leave?" Li Yundong glanced at her and stroked her head. He didn't answer, but turned to look at Zhou Qin. "What do you think?" Zhou Qin glanced at Li Yundong and knew that he was both asking and testing her, so she said, "I have some ideas, but I don't know if I can tell you." Li Yundong said, "There are only me and Su Chan here. There are no outsiders, so there's nothing to worry about. Go ahead." Zhou Qin looked at Su Chan and seemed to be very worried. She said, "Su Chan, if there's anything wrong with my words, don't take it to heart." Su Chan blinked her eyes in confusion. "No, I won't. As the saying goes, one person is short of wisdom, but 2 is long. Sister Zhou Qin, tell me." Zhou Qin nodded and said, "Then I'll say it. Master, I think this matter is very strange." Li Yundong asked, "What's strange about it?" Zhou Qin said, "Why did something happen to the Fox Zen school when Master Wu Hua came? Why did someone die just as he was about to tell us where Ao Wushuang was? If this is a coincidence, then it's too much of a coincidence. Li Yundong pondered for a while and said, I also think this matter is very strange. Master Wuhua just told me that Zhang Sun Hong was dead, and Main Yang was also dead. Xueqi nodded and said, Yes, and Master, did you find anything strange about the position of their bodies? Li Yundong couldn't help but look at Xueqi and say with admiration, You're right. In my opinion, this murderer should have killed Zhang Sun Hong first. Then, when Main Yang was wandering around, she suddenly broke in here and saw this scene. Then she let out a shrill scream. Then, in order to silence her, the murderer killed Main Yang. Watch net. At this time, Su Chan interrupted. This murderer is so cruel. Not only did he kill them, but he also sucked them dry. He didn't even let go of their souls. Li Yundong smiled gently at Su Chan and said, That's exactly what I wanted to say. If the murderer wanted to kill someone, then he could have just killed Main Yang. Why did he have to suck her dry and even her soul? Why was he so cruel? Su Chan couldn't help but glance at the two dried corpses on the ground, then quickly turned her face away. With a look of fear and disgust, she said, Maybe this murderer is a big pervert. Li Yundong shook his head and said, Whether he's a pervert or not is another matter, but I don't think it's a coincidence that both of them were sucked dry. Zhou Qin suddenly said, Although I don't know how to cultivate, is it possible that the murderer was afraid that if he didn't suck the other's soul, the soul might be able to tell us the murderer's name and appearance in the future? So the murderer was worried about this, Sog? Li Yundong raised his eyebrows and said, Your idea is very good. It's very possible. However, it was not an easy task to turn a person into jerky in such a short period of time and even suck away a person's soul. As far as the current situation is concerned, Zhang Yuan is very suspicious. However, there is another reason why I sent the others of the Fox Zen school away. Su Chan and Zhou Qin asked in unison, What reason? Li Yundong said in a deep voice, I suspect that there is a traitor in the Fox Zen school. Hearing Li Yundong's words, Zhou Qin raised her eyebrows. At first, she was a little surprised, but she quickly reacted and showed a thoughtful expression. Su Chan was so surprised that she gasped. It can't be, right? Su Chan knew the cause and effect of the siege of the Fox Zen school. In her opinion, the main reason why the Fox Zen school had suffered such a heavy blow this time was that Moashi and the others had lurked in the Fox Zen school and become traitors, collaborating with the major sections. But now that Su Chan had heard that there was a traitor in the Fox Zen school, she was not only shocked but also scared. For a moment, she was in a panic. The little girl grabbed Li Yundong's sleeve tightly and leaned against him. She said with a frightened expression, Yundong, why do you say that? Li Yundong pointed to where Zhang Sun Hong was and said, Although Zhang Sun Hong is not good at fighting, I heard from Xueqi that they are all very good at invisibility, illusion, and all kinds of charm techniques. Although they can't beat people, they can escape. Go to the internet. 7K. Oath M. And the scream from before was from Main Yang, not Zhang Sun Hong. This means that the culprit's cultivation is either too much higher than Zhang Sun Hong's, or it's someone she knows who suddenly attacked her when she was off guard. Su Chan let out a cry and clenched her fists. She stared at Li Yundong with her eyes wide open. Who could it be? Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, I don't know yet, but from what we can see, we can infer a few things. First, the person who killed Zhang Sun Hong may be very familiar with her, or his cultivation is much higher than hers. Secondly, we don't know if this person is here to kill us for our treasures or to seek revenge. However, if he's here to seek revenge, then he doesn't have to squeeze Main Yang dry. He could just come and find trouble with us openly. At this time Su Chan interrupted. Would he dare? Doesn't he know that our leader, Zhenren Li, is good at fighting and invincible? Li Yundong chuckled and glared at Su Chan, pretending to be angry. Nonsense. There are so many cultivators in the world. How can I be invincible? Li Yundong rubbed the little girl's head and continued. Between killing for the treasure and seeking revenge, I prefer the former. Only those who kill for the treasure are really afraid that the other party will know who took the powerful magical weapon. But there's also something suspicious about this. Before he could finish speaking, Zhou Qi nodded and said, Indeed, if he wanted to snatch the treasure, why did he want to snatch the body of the former leader Lu Yi? By the way, Could it be that the former leader ascended by himself, so his body was not left behind? Hearing this, Li Yundong laughed. He shook his head and said, "No, Lu Yi died of serious injuries. In this case, it's impossible for him to ascend." Su Chan suddenly said in fear, "Could it be that the leader has been resurrected?" Li Yundong was stunned, but then he shook his head and said, "I don't think so. Why would Lu Yi kill his own disciple? And I saw the injury he suffered last time. It was a serious injury that could not have been more fatal." As he spoke, Su Chan and Zhou Qin couldn't help frowning and saying in unison, "Then who is it?" Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, "Su Chan, let me say something. Don't think too much. Ever since I took over the Fox Zen school, I have found that there is an inexplicable atmosphere in the school. Especially what happened today. There is an evil aura. I think there must be someone secretly watching our Fox Zen school with evil intentions." Su Chan looked worried. "Yundong, I'm the one who has dragged you down. Why don't you quit being the leader of the Fox Zen school? Don't let the affairs of our sect implicate you." Li Yundong laughed and said, "Don't be silly. How can you retreat when you encounter difficulties and run away when you see an enemy? Whether this person is a foreign enemy or a traitor, I believe that sooner or later he will reveal his true identity. If he is a traitor, I don't believe that he won't reveal his foxtail." This sentence was so appropriate that Su Chan couldn't help muttering a few words. She subconsciously touched her back, as if she was afraid that she would show her foxtail now. Li Yundong looked at the little girl and said with a smile, "I'm not talking about you. What are you worried about?" Su Chan pouted and said, "I'm worried that you will suspect me." Li Yundong laughed and said, "Even if all the people in the world are dead, I won't suspect you. Don't be silly." When the little girl heard this, she immediately beamed. She held Li Yundong's arm and was about to act coquettishly. Li Yundong quickly coughed and said, "How dare you? Is this a place to play?" Only then did the little girl remember that she was still at the scene of the murder. She stuck out her tongue and then carefully peeked at Zhou Qin. She saw that the girl's face was motionless, and there was no trace of emotion between her and Li Yundong's eyebrows, as if she was not unhappy at all because of her and Li Yundong's frolicking. Su Chan secretly felt relieved. She knew that Zhou Qin was extremely talented and would definitely be a strong help to Li Yundong in the future. Although she was Li Yundong's doting girlfriend, Zhou Qin would definitely be Li Yundong's first disciple. She didn't want to be at odds with her. Li Yundong didn't notice the little girl's mentality. He said, "For now, it seems that we can't stay in Tianlong Mountain anymore. This place is too large, and it's easy for murderers to take advantage of it. Moreover, I can't keep an eye on this place all day long." Zhou Qin asked, "Then where do you want them to go? To the secret chamber of the Fox Zen school?" Li Yundong shook his head and said no. If there is really a traitor, it would be equivalent to telling the other party about the existence of the heavenly Jindan technique. I want them to temporarily live in Hongxing New area, where I live. Zhou Qin couldn't help but open her mouth wide with a strange look on her face. So many female disciples are going to live in your place? Can you stand it? There was a double meaning in her words. Li Yundong couldn't help but glare at her. Do you think I'm also a Buddha of joy? I'm letting them live there, and I'll take Su Chan to another place to live. Zhou Qin's cheeks turned slightly red and she said with a dry smile, I mean, don't you think they're noisy? Li Yundong was not willing to believe her explanation. He just rolled his eyes at her and said, Now, come with me to the secret chamber of the Fox Zen school. Su Chan, go into the room and get a pen and paper. Zhou Qin, you go too. Each of you make a copy of the heavenly Jindan technique, and then I'll find a way to seal this secret chamber. Then we'll go back to Tiannan City together. Su Chan and Zhou Qin turned around and went back into the house to look for pen and paper. Li Yundong, on the other hand, was pacing back and forth at the crime scene with a frown on his face. After a while, Su Chan and Zhou Qin came out of the house. Li Yundong put his hand on Zhou Qin's wrist and nodded to her. The three of them rose up. When Li Yundong took the two of them to the entrance of the secret chamber halfway up the mountain of the Fox Zen school, Li Yundong suddenly found that the branches and leaves at the entrance of the cave had been pushed aside, revealing an obvious entrance. This was no trivial matter. Li Yundong winked at Su Chan, asking her to take Zhou Qin and fly a little further down. He took a deep breath, pushed aside the branches and leaves at the entrance of the cave, and walked in himself. Li Yundong held his breath and concentrated. He walked lightly and slowly along the way, almost like a civet, not making a single sound. When he was about to enter the secret chamber, he clearly heard a faint, almost inaudible rustling sound coming from inside. Li Yundong's heart trembled. He knew that this person was probably the murderer, and Ao Wushuang's whereabouts were very likely to be related to him. He didn't hesitate any longer and rushed in fiercely. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.